So I did confirm with legal counsel that it shouldn't be a majority of the people, like you shouldn't use your whole board except one person to make quorum, but as long as the presiding officer is present in the posted location, you can continue with that. So presiding officer present, posted location present. So we're good on that. So with 2 here, plus you, that's 3, plus Stephanie, who has no voice right now. So she's going to join us by Zoom. She is logged in. I see her logged in over there. So that makes 4. So all we need is one more and we'll have 4. We'll be able to. So let's start with some celebration. That won't drive this, will it? Okay, I drive from here. Okay, awesome. So we're gonna start with a couple of district celebrations.
No,
So,
we're not.
oh, never mind. Oh, at the end. Never mind.
Whoa, I want to start with some campus celebration. Last Friday, the 39th, Martin Luther King Jr. wreath-laying ceremony happened on behalf of the city of Waco, right here across our campus at the Multipurpose Center. And for the first time in a number of years, we were able to participate again and have around 20 middle school students come and attend. We brought a wreath to also provide, and is now over at MLK Park. They moved in the last couple of years indoors this time of year, but it was really wonderful to be there. Rashonda Farmer-Neal, one of our board members, is also there and has an integral role in helping that event take place in our community. And so got to have our students take a picture with her as well. But really thankful for our middle school behavior team, Mrs. Whitfield and Mr. Bruce, who helped select some students, including our core value winners from this last quarter of middle school. So anyway, it was a great way for us to participate in the community at large, and a great historic person that is Martin Luther King Jr., as well as the Lee family, who is the family also of the Gibson family. They're the same family, Lester Gibson, who was a council member on our county commissioner, excuse me, who also has some of his kids are Rapoport alum. So anyway, it was good to make all those connections. Proud of that. Still, art club. Our art club participated in a contest and won $1,000 for a mural contest. A local company, the Roof Co., had a design contest of designing a dumpster, and we will put a mural on anything.
Yeah.
Dumpster was the opportunity to see the dumpster down here. I'm proud to say that one of few schools in the area that participated that also made the mural about Waco and not about themselves. So there's a little Rapoport on there. Just another way that we're engaged with the community, but also our art students are doing real life projects, real customers, real end users at the end of this, and they were one of the winners that we won.
That's awesome.
Proud of those students.
That's great.
See them at work. Led by Natalie Ward, our art.
Nice.
We also had our annual high school, college, and career fair this year. It has traditionally been a little bit more of a presentation. Some of you in this room have participated before in coming in. It can be a little intimidating for our community members who come and participate to stand in front of a group of students and talk for several minutes. And our students are always well engaged, but not always asking the best questions at the end of a presentation. So we've reformatted, especially thanks to Justin Ward, our work-based learning coordinator, and Ami Andrade, our college and career counselor, who spearheaded this effort. We had 30 plus businesses and representatives from our armed forces, from colleges in the area, from local community businesses who our students walk through, and you can see images here of them engaging with these different community members and walking with a lot of knowledge and information about options for them post high school.
It was so cool.
It was really engaging. Students were really into it. They had to go get a certain number of stickers on their card for a raffle drawing at the end, but lots of engagement. And the community members who participated were also pretty impressed by our students. Really proud of that. Turn things over to Ms.
Oh, we had some really exciting news last week because Joanna Gaines and Magnolia came and visited elementary. So I have been working with Magnolia since November, I think. I've been in contact with them. They were looking for a school for Joanna Gaines to come and read to because Joanna's new book comes out next week. So she wanted to read to a group of kiddos. So she came to Rapoport and it was delightful. Her whole little, I think there was like 5 girls with her from Magnolia. And then her PR guy, who also is in charge of their philanthropy, Miss T, Dr. Page and I were like, well, it's really great to meet you. Let's keep talking.
Yeah.
Awesome. So anyway, that was really great to connect. So she read to a first grade class and a kindergarten class, and it was wonderful. And she was just great with the kids, and they loved her. The kids all got books from her that were signed with each of their names written in it. They brought Magnolia cupcakes for all the kids. So it was really very, very sweet. So we're looking for some press to come out from Magnolia on that, with some videos and all of that. So anyway.
We are being
it was
careful,
really fun.
just in case you haven't seen it yet. It's not because we don't have the world's most amazing social media person. We're just gonna follow in the heels of their press. So as soon as they release it, we'll jump on that.
Which should come soon because her book is released on the 20th of January. So anyway, it was really sweet. Oh, and then back in December, we had Blue Santa come for the 2nd year. So Waco PD comes, and the Blue Santa was incredibly large this year. I mean, I don't know if he was like 6'5" or something. It was quite impressive. Like, wow, you're the biggest Santa I've ever seen. It was pretty hilarious. Both teams, raptors for kids. And we were these massive bags. They even called Dr. Page back later and said, hey, we actually have some extra gifts sitting around, so would you like some?
So that's me. So district-wide, a couple of things. So don't forget, the Black History Month celebration is coming up, Thursday, February 6th. It's just an hour, even though people will probably hang around after that a little bit. But it's 5:30 to 6:30. Last year was really great, and we absolutely expect it to be just as great this year. So there'll be all sorts of things going on during that moment. Hey, yay! And down. So, we're excited to make sure that you guys have it on your calendar to come for that. And then we did Every Raven Every Day staff awards. So these are the people across the district, elementary, both campuses, secondary, both campuses, and then also the district staff members. So we went around, they got the 3D printed ravens that Triple Win has done for us. They got a little bit of spending money, but more than that, they just got a whole lot of love from all of their staff, fellow teachers, fellow staff members, and our district person was actually one of our food service ladies. And so it's just really fun to see like a broad diversity of recognition and nominations. Some were nominated by students, some were nominated by their other peers. And so keep it up. If there's good things going on, we want you to celebrate those. Then I want to celebrate SJ Menifee over there. So as you guys know, when we cut budgets this year, we cut and we cut travel unless it was funded by some other source. And so SJ was like, okay, I'm going to find my own. And so she submitted and got a full ride to this conference. And so I think it's really exciting. So what they recognized is her leader in her field. Also, the fact that she works at Little Rapoport Academy is really helpful, but recognize that she has a lot to give to the conference, and then she'll also have a lot to get from the conference as well. So really excited that she's able to continue with that. And then it's Board Appreciation Month this month. So I travel or go to other places. I hear all sorts of horror stories about boards and dysfunction and getting out of their lane. And I just want to say, I don't have to worry about any of that. You guys are absolutely amazing. Even though tonight is a light night, we know a couple of them weren't going to be able to be here. But the way that you guys engage in exactly what you're supposed to be working in, staying on topic, staying in your lane, leading with our core values at mind and our students at the forefront. I'm really grateful for you and all that you guys do for Rapoport Academy. So there's a lot of celebrations. We did some swag earlier this month, and I think we might have something. Hello.
Oh. Oh. Oh, man.
Let's go Ravens!
Yay, all right.
Okay, based on the one virtual and everybody that's in the actual form.
Yay.
We'll call the meeting to order at 5:16 PM. And we'll start with a roll call.
Brady Croson present.
Emily Cunningham, present. Um,
Sorry, I have to make all the notes. And then
Okay, no public comment, or is there any public comment? No?
no public comment is received.
Okay.
And I am gonna make a note that we did, prior to the start of the meeting, that we did some celebrations and recognitions, and then we published the forum after that.
Okay, we had a number of big ticket expense items. Did anybody want to pull something out, or is there anything you want to say about that, Dr. Newman?
No, I tried
Yeah.
to make it as clear as I could with narratives and recommendations. Not all of them had that, but the detail was all there. The only question I think I might have anticipated is on the bus expenditure, we want the diesel one over the gas one. That's kind of common sense, but I didn't specify that in that. I gave you both quotes, but we really would like the diesel one. You had already approved some of that money to come from CTE fund, so we're just funding the other half of that. But other than that, I think everything in there had detailed explanation. The two Ravenport ones, those didn't have to go out for bid because they're through a purchasing co-op, so that's best price. And so those were just the vendors that were already approved. And so that gets most of the last of the owner supplied items. There's just a little bit more that we're working through for that one. So we're excited about all of those.
So we'll entertain any questions or motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes.
Sweet.
All right.
I did appreciate all the detail.
Yes, I
And
did
the
too.
summary and what was recommended.
Yeah, like the
I liked
narrative was
that.
really helpful.
Yes,
Thank you.
I was like, okay, good. Now I understand what I'm looking at. Yes, perfect. So yeah, it
Good,
worked.
I'm glad.
I liked it. I liked it.
Okay, so our parent representative doesn't have a voice today. And our faculty representative is not well right now. And so he'll be back hopefully at the next meeting.
Right. He had asked that I pass along the progress that they've made on the history project, and that he gave me some details, like they need a smooth wall so it'll stick better, but that looking that could be ready by March. They've made a lot of progress on it. Do you know, did he get the dimensions? I forgot to ask him that. Okay, great. And sorry, you guys, it was like 6:30 in the morning. I gotta think about what the second item was, but I'll come back. Yeah. I'm sorry. It was just another update
We
thing.
can always pop back into that one.
Yeah.
I will say it's not necessarily from the parent representative, but we're really excited. We have some potential partnerships for the mural in the gym. And so through possibly our apprenticeship Waco, through a former student with a professional muralist, we've had a couple of introductory meetings, and it looks like that's going to be something that we're going to be able to work through. So
The screaming Raven.
it is the whatever's going to go above the visitor side to like on top of them. Yes. So there'll be a lot of art at
Good.
Liberty, and there'll be a lot of engagement with students in the project as well. So we're really excited about the possibilities for that. But our parent rep is actually helping facilitate a lot of those conversations. So we're excited about that.
I thought of the second thing is his committee, not a curriculum committee, but the teaching. Thank you. They are meeting at the end of January, so he should have a report in February, what's discussed.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, finance committee. Mr. Croson?
Oh, yeah. So we've had a few things. One is with the endowment, I think just Friday or Saturday, we got the quarterly statements and quarter report from the advisor. So any discussion on that and the endowment, kind of will be more in depth next month. Also talked about that February would be the startup for rolling out the scholarship detail and information, coordinating with the scholarship committee and getting that scheduled. Let's see what else. Those were the main things. I didn't understand your note that you'd mentioned about the grant writing thing.
Oh, I just wanted to
Yes.
call out, thank SJ
Yes.
NC, who has agreed
Oh.
to
She gone.
be a resource for the Baylor graduate class,
Thank
the
you.
Baylor
That's what
graduate
it
grant
was,
writing
yes.
class. So,
Yeah.
thanks to her.
I know.
Yeah, so I don't know that they won't submit, but we'll have some language and some ideas that are based off of Shaq's needs assessment. So it's something for Llewellyn, physical activity, outdoor space, and middle school physical activity for like non-athletes, something that's not like athletic centric, like
Yeah.
Gaga ball pit, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, district improvement. Do you have anything, Neil?
We did meet, we do, yeah, so new for this month, we had some discipline data that we were able to look at. It's broken down kind of across, grade levels, and then also sort of by level of infractions. We're able to see kind of some of the effects of new and different approaches to discipline, and also kind of the value of tracking that to ensure that applying disciplinary practices equitably and for the purpose of district improvement, that goes along with some of our teacher data and our achievement data, because kids can't learn unless they're in school. So the attendance data we also looked at, and I think we're really at basically an all-time high. And I think we're at a level that most districts would be envious of. And so attendance is there. So we've got kids here. We can keep them in class with like managing discipline at some of those earlier levels of intervention. Then we're hopefully going to see some improvement in scores across the board. And then kind of the other component of that sounds like Chris is talking about, like you need good teachers, you need them to stay, you need them to grow. So yeah, I think that's kind of where we're at. We're trying to finish up. We had started last month that idea on our alumni survey, and so we just hadn't finalized some of those questions because we didn't quite have everybody together to hash out the language, but hopefully we'll have that next month.
Good.
Yes, I think it's wonderful that we have a representative.
I know.
Mhm. Yeah.
Last, so, John and the ladies and I got some updates, Miss. Took one
Good
had
time, yes.
an opportunity to go through, the building so far and see how things were, so she reported to us and shared some pictures about different things. There actually is a kind of a marquee that set up, kind of a temporary marquee. She wanted to know if that may be something that we would like to use in a more permanent situation for any type of game night information or what might be going on outside the gym. But just in general, bringing up the point that we may want some type of marquee outside of the gym. We've had a great kind of first run of the brick and paver fundraiser. Some of the things that we are looking at are making that design, that kind of signature art in the entryway, and getting a blank paper that is less expensive than ordering from the Bricks R Us company. And so they're researching that and willing to kind of cover that cost within the committee, but we've not been able to find anyone locally who prints this 8x8 kind of blank at a reasonable price. And so we're still investigating, and actually John was gonna look into that further with the gentleman from Masonic to see if they knew a supplier locally that could bring that cost down. And also the push moving forward, since this is the new year, and I'm looking at empty chairs, but everyone, go back and look at the recording because I wanted to make sure I express this to the entire board. The school has done a great job on social media, putting things out, but that the board members ourselves take more ownership of making sure that we reach out to our contacts, and if everyone can commit to making at least 10 to 15 contacts and sharing that information. And if there's anything we need, a graphic, a poster, any verbiage, let SJ know, and I'm sure they have something that we can share. But just continue pushing it out and make sure that the board really leads the charge in fundraising. And that's making sure as well that if your organization can purchase something, to put that in, and if you yourself can make a purchase to put that in. So we hope to come back. But so far we've raised about $3,000, maybe a little bit more.
Wow.
And that's with just the kind of soft rollout, people telling people, but we want to aggressively push. And the good thing about the project is in whatever we do, we are able to continue that fundraiser. So if there's only a certain portion that we have to install and then use some blanks or spacers for later, we can still go back and do a phase 2, but we would love to complete phase 1 in the entryway. So that is my appeal on behalf of the facilities committee, is to contact 10, 15 people that you know personally and encourage them to make their investment in the Rapoport gym and make their mark on it by having the paper there.
And there'll be a great segue for people tomorrow. So we're gonna do another like social media update, with, like video from out there. And one of the things we're gonna do is start from the front. So I'll talk about where our Rapoport entry is gonna be, and you can buy a brick, and she's gonna put like a link up on there. So you can just
Perfect.
click right on that, and then we'll do the tour of the rest of it. So
Great.
that'll come out. We're recording it tomorrow. I think her goal is to get it out by the end of the week. So you'll be able to take that and then push it out from there.
Big push.
I wanted to kind of go back to the district improvement thing. One question I know that kind of has come up before in the past is the cell phone usage with the students and how each teacher in each class and each grade seems to interpret it all differently. I didn't know if there's been any resolution on that in terms of like kind of
Yeah. I don't know,
enforcing
I mean, I
it,
think
but
it's really not a problem in elementary school, so that'd really be a secondary question.
We turn in.
And middle school,
perfect.
high school, you wanna talk about that?
Can you state the question?
Yeah,
That we were trying to solve about.
Yeah, that I feel like there was sometime last year, there were some questions about students being able to use it in one classroom, but then the next classroom they didn't. And, you know, there seemed to be confusion with the students on the enforcing of that in our handbook.
It was part of the HIPAA discussion last year.
Yes, correct.
So I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah,
At that point
and
last
honestly, it
year,
really mostly affects high school, middle school
Yeah,
also has a very
that's true.
strict policy about access to cell
Yeah.
phones during the school day. So similar, elementary school, middle school students turn in cell phones at the beginning of the day and pick them up.
Oh, okay.
So they'll
Okay.
carry them
Yeah.
with them. 8th grade is a transition year, so we kind of work our way towards high school where they do have more frequent access. But the policy didn't change in terms of teacher, kind of teachers maintaining that expectation in the classroom. We still have implemented kind of a procedure for how teachers designate for students when they're allowed to use their cell phone and when they're not. And I think there are some teachers who never put up their "you can use your cell phone" sign, and some teachers who never take down their "you can use your cell phone" sign. So there is still variance from classroom to classroom. But there is a really clear way for students to know whether it's allowed or not allowed.
Got it.
Or violating or not violating.
Got it. Okay.
So,
Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right. That's fine. Yeah.
Thank you. Presentation of annual report.
Perfect. In your drive. Let me go find it. Okay, in your drive for this month, there's a folder that's called annual report. I'm not gonna go through all of it because you have already seen most of the bits and pieces of it before. So every year in January, we have to present the annual report, which includes our campus improvement plans, our district improvement plans, which you've already seen all of those. It also includes the TAPR, the guidelines, the glossary, and the actual TAPR information. So that's recently released. Again, a lot of the scores and stuff you've already seen, we've already talked about, but that's some added information. Then we have our accreditation status. We're still accredited, which is always good. There's been no violent or criminal activity. You will see our HB3 goals. I'm not going to delve into those because we're going to talk about some of that here in just a minute. And then you have our federal report cards and then the coordinating board persistent data. So you can see all of that up there. The Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board persistent data is kind of interesting data. I mean, it's a super simple little report. I'll just pull it up here so you can see it real quick. But it's
Bring
just,
this up.
huh?
I meant to bring this up in the district improvement.
Okay, yeah.
I had a little arrow there. But
We'll cover it. So it's just interesting because it just says, for the class of 23, again, it's just kind of that next year. For the class of 23, where did people go and what did they do? So if you can look here, we had 10 that went to MCC, we had 5 that went to TFTC, we had 8 that went to other places. If they go out of state, they show up as either not found or not trackable, I think is what they told me. So we had a few that might have gone there. And then if they don't go anywhere, they show up as not found. Sometimes that'll happen if the kid's not coded correctly when they get to the higher ed, but they usually follow that and find that out pretty quickly. So that's kind of where we were for the class of 23. I'm going to work on adding this historical data to our longitudinal tracker so that we can start kind of look at that. It's just not anything we've ever plugged into that. And so I think it'd be helpful as we look at that big, that big data document that we kind of run every year. So I'm going to look at trying to kind of backfill some of that.
When was this counted? Before graduation or after?
So this is last year's graduates
Right.
as measured right now. I think it was released
okay.
in December. So
It's like
it's,
what they actually end up doing.
Mhm,
Got it.
yeah, not what did they plan on or what did they think about, but like, where were they come September 1? Were they trackable or not trackable?
2 years ago.
Sorry. Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
43,
yeah, yeah.
23. So where were they for that one?
Got
So there's some other data that we're trying to get. There's a weird thing with the login that tracks them several years out from that. And that's very nice. So we're working.
Oh, interesting.
You guys.
Not found could be they moved and they're launching a.
They could
doing something,
be
maybe busy. in
out of state.
Florida,
Yeah, or they went and got a job because they were totally prepared for what they wanted to do. So they'll be called not found because they're not in an institute of higher ed. Military would be not found. Because this is only if they're in higher ed, a 1 year, a 2 year,
Oh,
a 4 year, something like
right.
that. Mhm.
Okay.
So, yeah, career, military, that would all be in the not found piece of it. So, it's just interesting data if, you find yourself bored and you want to read through stuff, but most of it is things you've seen before, but I would strongly suggest you go read through that. We make this available to anybody that ever wants it. If somebody says, hey, I'd like a copy of your annual report, we print out almost 700 pages of this, or hopefully we provide it to them electronically, but it is a publicly available report. So that's that. Any questions on them? Dig through it and call and ask me any questions you want to.
I just thought when I was looking at the TAPR that I thought compared to the state, our averages were really good. We either were at the same level or exceeded it.
A lot of places we are.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
so, I mean,
We want to be our best, and that's one of the things we talk about a lot is when we look at schools like us, we fare pretty well in most places.
mhm.
But we still want to be at our best at all times. And we'll talk about that here just a little bit when we do kind of state of the campuses in our training.
Okay.
All right. I do just receive and file.
Oh, okay.
Is there a motion?
To receive and file.
I move we receive and file the
Thank you.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Your report is received and filed.
Perfect.
We'll shift to elementary ELAR curriculum.
Yeah, so this is a big one. Lauren Teague is here, Jennifer is here. They're leaders of the committees that has walked through this. I preemptively sent you guys the email that Lauren sent out, and it included a video of our rollout. Hello? It included a video of our rollout to the elementary campuses. As we walk through the whole process that got us to where we were to that. So Lauren, you can jump in and talk anytime you want to, but really what this is on the agenda for is we need the board to officially allow us to move forward with TEA's kind of primary choice, the Bluebonnet curriculum for English language arts. We're also going to move forward. We already have Carnegie, now TEA for middle school is Carnegie Math, and it looks like we're moving forward with, it's just a different name now, but it's the same that we're already using, but that's still under discussion. So this is for Bluebonnet, elementary up through 4th grade, English language arts. As you saw in the presentation, if you look through that, we know it's not perfect, but it really does fit the best that we possibly can. It really does fit what the staff said we were looking for in a curriculum. What it allows us to do, and again, it's one of the things I closed in that video with, what it allows us to do is to spend our time making learning rich and engaging, and not spending our time making sure the verbiage in the question in the checkup thing is aligned to STAR, or that this text is addressed in that. We know that stuff is going to be met, and we don't have to stress about that. Instead, we can stress about the feeling and the engagement in the classroom. So, Lauren, what else do you want to add to that?
I would just say a big part of it was looking at what are the barriers that our staff are experiencing right now, and how is that impacting our students, and then looking for something that helps fill those gaps. We know what we're good at, and it's the things that Dr. Newman described. The things that are harder for us to fix are when standards aren't aligned, and when, you know, we have brand new staff in the classroom that don't have a deep and wide toolbox to reach into in order to fill gaps. And that way we can provide a little bit more equity across our classrooms because it's just built in to the instructional material we're handing to the teacher. The other big thing that I will say is because this is endorsed by TEA and the commissioner, professional development is going to be a lot more readily available. So beyond just our initial implementation, when all of our staff will be trained, anyone that we newly onboard, there will likely be a lot more opportunity that is curriculum-based professional development for our teachers, whereas we've just been executing that in-house rather than it being something that we can go and send teachers to, which is fine, but there's only so much time that we have with our staff at NTO or at August PD to do that. And then versus where they can go to the service center and go ongoing throughout the school year, alongside the support that our instructional coaches and leadership team already offer our teachers.
What kind of questions?
I have a few questions.
Great.
Have you, based on the video, I'm under the understanding you've not been able to see the religious or the biblical reference
Actually, yeah.
lessons. Oh, you have?
Mhm.
Okay.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Sure. A good example of in lesson, in the units, it's not community helpers, but it's something along the lines of like being a helper, right, in your community. And so there's lots of things that they cover within that. One of the stories in there is the Good Samaritan. It does reference other religious texts that have a similar story. So it says, this story is present in the Quran in this way. This story is present, but then the mentor text that they read out of is the Bible. And so there's a little bit of a preference there. And when we met with Todd Davis from TEA, he was very upfront about that and the fact that that is something that they're aware of, but it does reference other religions within that. And truly, kindergarten has, I think, 2. 5th grade has quite a few. We don't have to mess with that because they will not be a part of our adoption for elementary. And so I haven't spent much time looking at the 5th grade ones, to be honest. But it's one lesson within a unit, typically. And there might be maybe 2 of those per grade level.
Per semester or for the year?
For the year.
For the year. Oh.
So out of, 170 lessons, there'll be maybe 2. I think that's one of the things we talked with our teams about is that the lessons are the units are vertically aligned, right? So you don't want to like throw out whole things because it won't make sense in the next year or the next year. But at the same time, implementation, that's where those conversations come into play, right? Having staff and teams and very open conversations about what fits for us. I'll be honest, the curriculum we currently use, there's some books that were provided as possible mentor text that we said, no, thank you. That is not going to work for our community. Not saying that these won't, just saying that we are open to knowing that no curriculum is going to fit everything 100%. But what's important is that when we talk about implementation, that we do it together and that we do it with fidelity and that we talk about those hurdles and those barriers and those bumps because nothing is 100%. So if we're talking 2 lessons that could make us go, if it's using the Bible as a piece of literature, meaning an available piece of literature, okay. If it feels more evangelical proselytizing, no, that is not what Rapoport Academy does. And we are very careful to create an environment of inclusivity and a place where people can feel like they belong regardless of religious background or anything else. And so that's something that this team, and as we work with teachers for implementation, we're going to be very aware of. So I think the selection was not blind to potential pitfalls. I think the selection is understanding that we're going to look critically at implementation, but how do we move forward with the best that we can? And it seems like the best that we can for new teachers, for professional development, for vertical alignment from K all the way through 4, for an established TEKS, meaning what the state says is supposed to be taught, TEKS, and ultimately STAR alignment. This is what we have. It also comes with additional funding, so it's more cost effective. It's not the only reason we made the decision, but you can't not talk about funding in today's educational environment, right? And so there's all these different check marks. Again, the pros and cons, you guys saw it when you looked at that video that we presented to our elementary staff. There's pros and cons all the way down. There was really only 2 curriculums that we felt like kind of merited deep evaluation. The others didn't even meet what the staff had put together for the learning framework. They didn't even make it through the learning framework. And that was what the staff told us. The teacher told us that they wanted. And so it really came down to these 2. And then there was a pretty clear winner when we went through that. But Lark, anything else you'd want to add to that before?
Well, I was just gonna say, some of you may know this about the curriculum and some may not, but the moving to these new curriculums, it's a different way of thinking about reading English language arts, and it's a knowledge building curriculum. It almost turns reading class into a social studies class. The whole purpose, instead of saying today is about main idea, we're gonna pull in texts that are only gonna focus on main idea. This is saying today we're going to focus on knowledge building. So today we're going to focus on pyramids. That's where we're going to dig into today. And along the way, we're going to discuss main idea and some other things. We're going to write about pyramids. It's all about knowledge building as opposed to skills in reading. And we have had a curriculum that is skill building. Okay. And then you just happen to talk about some different knowledge pieces along the way. And so the whole discussion about the biblical texts, if you think about it in the sense of a social studies class or a history class, most people don't balk at something like that, right? They're like, yeah, it's literature. There's all different religions, and you can talk about all the pieces of it, whatever. I mean, obviously, the elementary piece is the fact that kids are a little bit younger, but when you think about it in the context of a knowledge building curriculum, and a curriculum that is built to help our kids gain knowledge and learn how to read and write along the way of gaining knowledge, then it makes a little bit more sense in that context, as opposed to just we're throwing biblical text in and other religious texts in for the fun of it, right? When you start thinking about it in the context of knowledge building curriculum, that's, I think, how you get there.
Did you have any teacher feedback after that Zoom call?
We did, yes. So 2 things. One, I had one teacher asked to meet with me. Ms. T sought out feedback from a few other teachers, like went to them.
Oh, good.
And they engaged a little bit. So only one person asked actually to meet with me about it. And Ms. T and I had a great conversation with that teacher, and we were able to address concerns and thoughts with her. But Ms. T put out a Google form that you guys would have seen, that Google form in the email. And so she's been able, and we've gone through and kind of looked at the feedback from teachers. And a lot of it is just looking at implementation and what that looks like, and looking at the rollout plan and how best can we do this, and what sort of PD do they feel like they need, and what do they want us to be mindful of, and all that stuff. So we actually had a Zoom call today with our approved provider, TNTP, the New Teacher Project. And so part of what we'll work on February 4th is our implementation rollout plan. And that will really include those heavy pieces of feedback from teachers based on the Zoom call that we did.
It's very data-based. So we're looking at historical student data and looking at what are the things that we've identified as problems, and what is going to help us best close those gaps for our staff, for our students, all of those things.
And we also had, Chris Mason also jumped on that call. I don't know if you could see.
Yeah, I
those
saw,
photos, but she had him jump on the call, asked him if he would, and he said, absolutely. And so you followed up with him afterwards.
I did, yeah. I mean, I felt like as the faculty rep, it would make a lot of sense for him to just hear it firsthand in the Zoom, and so that was really good. And afterwards, he and I spoke on the phone and had a good conversation, and he felt like that we were able to address kind of the reasoning behind it and the why behind getting to that decision, but also just the honesty for the pieces of curriculum. And we weren't trying to not share anything with the teachers or to not just lay all the cards on the table.
Good questions? What other questions?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for
Yeah.
that meeting.
Yeah, that was
Really,
really good.
it's articulate and considered all of your points, and it's really.
I think Lauren and Jennifer did an amazing job of leading us through the process it was a totally different way to look at curriculum. It wasn't just what curriculum is available. Okay, let's analyze it. It's what do we want in a curriculum, and really gathering the voices and the input and the feedback, and then taking that framework and saying, okay, now what fits this? And it really made the decision so much easier. It wasn't about personal opinions. It was about, here's what the voices have said we need. Okay, now what reflects this? And so I think it just made it a lot clearer. Is it without problems? No. Is there without questions? No, that's where implementation is going to come in. But are we going to be able to take that and potentially do some really great things for new teachers as they come in? Experienced teachers, really flesh out engagement in the classroom. I'm really excited about what that's going to look like.
Well, and I was the one who shared the Zoom, but Ms. T has done a ton of work. Leading up to now, and will continue to be done.
Well, I did appreciate the pro cons, the laying it all out, explaining it,
Yeah.
explaining how you got to where you
Sure.
were. Thought that was all.
I feel like
Really
we had to,
good.
I mean, you've got to
Sure.
kind of pull back the curtain and see.
Yeah.
One of the things that at least one of the teachers brought to us, and I'm sure others feel it, but we didn't bring both of these curriculums to them. And so we were able to share with them, and I'll share with you all that, that was hard for us because we could have either said, well, we as a committee have looked through the framework and these, and we've really decided that this one's the best one. And if I would have brought two to them, we really would have been disingenuous. To say like, thanks for your feedback. But we actually already made the decision. But only to bring one to them also was a struggle because then we knew that they would feel like, where was my voice in this? And so we had to battle both of these. It's like when you're between a rock and a hard place, right? Like, what does that look like either way? And so this is the way we decided to go. But in that, we have to lay out the pros and the cons and the how we got to this decision and the why so that they can understand.
Well, and y'all made sure we stay true to their voice, which was in the framework.
Yes.
And if we stay true to the voice in the framework, the end selection was pretty simple.
Mhm.
Not without questions, right? But pretty simple. If we didn't stay true to that, there might have been more argument and discussion on this side, but we heard their voice, and we created that framework, and that really led us a lot more directly to kind of that end result. So, depending on other questions or conversations, what we would need is approval from the board to adopt and move forward with the implementation for the Bluebonnet ELA curriculum for 2024.
I do have just,
Go for it.
because I really do appreciate, I know how much work it is to site visit and evaluate curricula and liaison with TEA, and so that's a lot. And I definitely think that your process works and you've identified what I think is the right curriculum. One of the things that at least I think about as someone who does a lot of stuff with curriculum, and again, I talk to a lot of my elementary colleagues because I'm secondary and some of my ELAR folks because I'm social studies, but it's like a lot of this integration, right?
Yeah.
So there's more that's being brought in. Is that like I think there are these problems that we've sort of we're gliding over are a little bit more serious if we're not going to attend to them. And one of the cool things I think about having a packaged curriculum like this, because it facilitates, like you said, you don't have to worry about alignment. You don't have to worry about spiraling. And so what I'd like to at least feel comfortable with is that we're going to use some of that additional time and some of that additional coaching to maybe replace some of the more what I think of as problematic lessons. Like going through, because I looked at them all and I looked at fifth grade, which I probably shouldn't have, but like I don't see the reason that a kindergartner needs to learn about art through the Christian story of creation. Like I don't know why they have to read Genesis to learn about art. So in my mind, like we got to teach them art. We should do that through literature. Now that we've got all of our K-4 curriculum spiraled and everything's taken care of and aligned, can we put a team of Rapoport teachers to put together a better lesson, right? Can we sub that out? Can we
So
sub out?
that's the implementation attack, right?
Right,
So
yeah, and
that's-
so I just want to make sure that we're like on the ball there and we're not.
We've already talked with teachers about being,
Right,
especially some that have been a little more forward in their concern
Mhm.
with some of these things and saying, then help us.
yeah, because I mean, there was significant pushback in the academic and in public comment about this curriculum. It was adjusted this fall to attend to some of that. But I think some of it does, I think, privilege or at least pay more attention to certain belief systems than others. And like you said, that's not what we want. And so even if it's 2 lessons a year, if it's 2 lessons that aren't on, that aren't inclusive, those are the ones that it shouldn't be a lot of work to swap those out or to find alternatives or find texts that work.
And the reality is, based on bad weather days or holidays or professional development days or things like that, we end up having to move lessons some anyway.
Yeah.
And so that may just be some of the implementation conversation that we have. But I think to me, that's where Rapoport Academy is really strong as we move forward with implementation, teacher voice and ownership of the curriculum, planning with instructional coaches, right? Like we make adjustments all the time.
Yeah.
Whether it's because of schedule or because of content or because of teacher ability or because of student need, right? Like we make adjustments all the time. So I know they're already committed to that.
Well, and sometimes you can think about addition and not just deletion and part, and like, let's look at one of those other texts
Right.
from another, because when we think about building their worldviews
Mhm.
and knowledge building, like, we want to give them access to maybe ones that they wouldn't have a chance to hear that story and to understand that as they build their worldview. And so I think some of that may come in adding to, and allowing them to, let's look at another mentor text.
Yeah.
From a different.
Which I think would be great. And again, as a social studies person, I'm excited about that integration, more, like you said, knowledge, that relates to, there's just a little time for that.
So we've already talked about that basically we need to do a lot for implementation rollout, but having a committee that would just look at the religious text piece.
Yeah.
Go through all the grade levels in K-4, pull out all of the religious texts, look at all of them. Let's step back a little bit.
Yeah.
Look at all of them and say, what sort of worldview, what sort of knowledge building, what are we giving to our kids through this? And is there a way that we can expand that? Do we need to consider what these lessons are? Do we need to flex them? Do we need to pull them out? Do we just need to expand them like those things?
That's great.
Again, with that equity inclusion
Kind of
volume.
thought.
Yeah. So what in the curriculum, what was their reasoning or justification for adding those religious contexts? Was there any, is there a reason why they would do that? Versus, it just seems kind of strange. I mean, yeah. Yeah, I know, yeah. Yeah, it just seems strange.
Waiting, a meeting to be scheduled.
Region 12 is over here kind of chuckling.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there was some questions that we asked David,
Mhm.
that he was like, that's more of a curriculum development question.
Mhm.
I can't get that nitty-gritty with you,
Sure.
but I would love to set that up. You know, we met with him in November, and I've been trying since then to set that up.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
haven't scheduled yet, but also that's given us some time to get some specific questions from teachers via that forum that, like, what do you want to know from the curriculum developer? And there are, those questions have been included.
I would just say it's not
Yeah.
surprising considering the political climate that there's a heavy conservative movement
Sure.
within that. Our job is to create a place where every kid feels represented and feels their voice. And we've done a really great job historically, and we're going to do a really
Yeah.
great job. So that's what we're committed to, is that we have a curriculum that is aligned, that's vertically aligned, that's connected with the state assessment, that's engaging for kids, and that all kids feel like they belong and they see themselves in the learning that they do.
Yeah.
Can I have a motion or other questions?
I do have a question. I see we considered it a great deal, and that's awesome. What if perhaps any student or parent has an issue? Is there any type of recourse for someone that's like, you know what? I love everything you do except that. and I don't want my child to be a part of. I know we opt out sometimes of discussions that happen outside of class, but is there any kind of opt out for parents that feel like, you know what, I just disagree with the change in curriculum for some reason?
I think my answer to that would be, I mean, I don't know, like, is there a board policy for that in the entire district? Because I'm sure that there's other classes and courses that a parent may not agree with. So I guess I would answer that by putting it back to the board to say, if there is a policy like that, then I would need to know about it. Like, we've not ever encountered that before.
I would say if there's elective classes, we are very careful that our elective classes are all kind of universal. However, if there is a holiday celebration that maybe goes against somebody's religion, then we offer, like, yes, they can step out for that moment, or they could go to the playground during that moment, or they could do whatever. And so we work with families that have religious beliefs or religious differences. I mean, that wouldn't be any different. My hope would be that by the time the implementation committees are done, is that it's just high quality education, that we ensure the voice and representation of all students. I would say it would be almost impossible at our lower levels to remove a child from the English language arts curriculum. And honestly, based on what we've investigated, that would not be appropriate, because a dramatic majority of what we have in that curriculum is great work. And by the time the implementation groups are done, our teachers who are dedicated to equity, inclusion, and belonging right in the classroom are going to be comfortable with it.
So there is, and I didn't actually see it in the curriculum, but there is something called a family support letter for some of these units that's supposed to inform parents that they're going to be studying this. I didn't see what that actually looks like. And I
That would
don't
be part of
know
the implementation
how
team.
it's implemented or anything like that, but it does exist to address those concerns.
There's all sorts of family engagement pieces with the curriculum, which is really nice. That was one of the things that we were excited about.
That is, yeah.
You know, so
Okay, a question or a motion?
Right, I make a motion for adoption of the Blue Bonnet curriculum and implementation.
and just a question, Lee, based on discussion, would you like kind of periodic updates?
I would, and I say it not because of us, but I think we hit on something kind of political climate. Sometimes it's not necessarily as much about the kid as it may be about a parent and a stand that they may want to take. And I can remember visiting a school, I will say, when looking for schools, that was very strongly aligned with teaching history right along with the Bible. And I thought it was awesome because, you know, I teach this and share this. But I could imagine that someone who wants maybe that same kind of experience would still say, well, you know what? I would like to see some more diversity or this or that. So I just want to make sure, and especially considering last year, there was a little bit of a situation with someone who thought they had opted out of something. And it wasn't noted that if something does come up and for whatever reason, a parent says, you know what, I don't want my child to hear this particular piece or be there for that, that they have that opportunity to. And I hope that when parents are listening to the board meeting, that, you know, maybe they don't have that question, but they're looking for the way that if they need to speak to you and address anything, that they feel comfortable in bringing it up.
So we'll make sure in that implementation plan that we kind of reflect for how that voice is heard.
Is there a second? I'd like to second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Oh, you're abstaining.
You're abstaining?
I didn't say
Okay.
no either.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, I didn't.
you didn't. Oh,
Didn't either.
Which way you go?
I'm reluctantly say aye.
With concerns about?
I just have my concern that I have with it is at the state level, that I think it's criminal that they would tie being able to give funding to make it cheaper for schools, but also throw in religious text. That's my only negative, is that I think
The
it's
religion
wrong.
is in the TEKS. It's really not, the curriculum
Oh, it
is
is.
following the TEKS.
Oh,
So I don't
Oh,
even think
well.
it's a,
Okay.
Religion is in.
Yes,
Which is still.
yes, it is. And I hate that all of it's political. And
The frustration about.
yes. Oh, okay, good. All right.
Too stressed.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the calendar.
Oh, all right, we'll do it.
Pulling the calendar agenda item. So I had a draft calendar and I thought, yeah, I'm ready to send it to the board. And then I had a suggestion from a staff member, that I thought had some real merit. So we've gone back, I've created a second draft. Tyler and Jennifer have that second draft as does the superintendent cabinet. So they're gonna look through those. I'll bring it to you in February. I'd like to get feedback from their teams and the staff on that second option, before I bring it to the board. So I'm pulling that agenda item.
Yeah, I didn't see it in the, that's where I was
It
like,
was in
well, what
there,
I was
that's
wondering. Okay, yeah.
And then I took it back because
Was-
this suggestion that we got really had to.
Was it not to start before August 1st? Because
We
I know
had plenty of
that,
those.
okay. Okay,
It's kind of difficult, like,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
just-
got it, yeah. Got it.
I'm really excited about that. At that point, that is the last regularly scheduled agenda item. We're ready to move to board training. Okay, we take it maybe a couple of minutes. break?
Yes, yeah, take a break, and if you haven't gotten something to eat, they have sandwiches, so,
Mhm.
They're right over there. Right, 6:02. What time do you
Yeah.
expect?
Is it 5? Oh, yeah, 6:02. Yeah. Yes. Well, I don't, not anything with how we did it.
No, I don't disagree.
I feel like we did it right. I think when you look at the, because when I was pulling up the website, I was looking through everything, all the percentages aligned to be 100 and all the other ones really didn't. And I was like, well, I can see why. But
Yes.
there's a lot of pros to it. I understood the integration.
It's the right choice. It's how you
Yes.
prepare your teachers to work. in a
Yes,
broader
and
context.
yeah, that's where.
How do you add? And I think that's what Lori is right.
Yeah,
Is how do you
yeah.
add? Well, and I think that reality is how do you add such that the state shows
Mhm,
curriculum.
mhm.
It's good for us. And that's where
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
gonna be some things that we're like,
It's-
"Hmm."
But
And there's gonna be some things we're like, sure, and, so that we stay points. Like there's some folks in the classroom that we, like, we wanna have other voices in the classroom, and so we push the line sometimes on, not like,
Yeah.
racy books and all that sort
Yeah.
of stuff, like sexually racy books, like not that direction, but we make sure voices are represented, and we're gonna do the same for this. So the ad is probably more helpful than the receipt. But
Yeah.
I can't tell you how
Well,
many
it
times
is
we've
like-
all gotten angry because we really are being held in a certain.
Yes, yes. Uh-huh,
Not
it
the
is.
public schools,
Yes,
like this
it
is
is.
not,
No, it's not.
but the great thing is we have great implementation.
Yeah, well, I did like your idea. I thought that was great. To say, okay, hey, well, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
brought it up, but yeah,
Yeah,
saying, I didn't even think about that. I was like, oh, with the extra time, well, that's really great.
I appreciate the
Yeah,
extra
yeah,
support.
uh-huh,
Well,
yeah,
because we're having to work through this, like,
Yeah,
that, like, I was talking to my UR colleagues and they're like, well, I thought it was still up in the air of being, I was like, no, this is greenlit. And so they're bringing it into the classes this semester.
almost no curriculum.
Well, that's
like that
why-
is our option.
Yeah.
I mean, these things are good option, but that
Mhm.
is our option.
I remembered, there was should be no, right, public members of the public to be able to come into our meeting.
Yeah.
Door was locked today. I was standing there knocking and the cheerleaders were like, mm-mm. we're not."
Yeah.
Ingredient.
We'll grab one of them. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
Is it by email?
Yes. It's just, I mean, it was, by sharing it through Drive, Google Drive, so it should send you. Hi.
Hey.
Suppose it's pretty,
Yes.
2 out of our 3 weeks have involved some question about are we going to be here? When are we getting?
Did y'all do something with the last?
We did, yeah, we did the Thursday, that first week, we did a delay. And we didn't need anything, but I think it was a smart move because it gave us the chance to not cancel, but get up in the morning and make sure that it was okay. And about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago,
Yes, ma'am.
like everybody was like canceling and we were like, we're not doing it. It's gonna be fine. And we got everybody here just in time for it to start sleeting. And like, I was like walking between buildings, like sliding. And we're like, we gotta get them out.
Driving to campus.
Yeah. Yeah.
My old truck like didn't have a heater, so I was like trying to clear my windshield to get in from Asheville.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It was a mistake to come in that day, which, it's hard decision to make, but yeah, it's one of those like, we're making everybody come back when it's, the weather's worse, like if we just had that, so I think I don't know if that's what we'll do more commonly.
Yeah.
But I think it makes sense for it to be a more common practice to be like, if it's questionable, if it's like gonna be a game time decision where like, we don't know what's gonna happen overnight, let's make the decision to delay. Right. And what people need to know is, they need to know, I'm not bringing my kid in, not school happening. Like, school happening at the last minute, that's okay. I'm gonna work and drop my kid off. School's not happening at the last minute, or now I'm not going to work, that's a whole different kind of. It's coming on. It's coming on.
I did.
Well, I just washed my hands, so.
Okay, I didn't have one.
Thank you.
This is that academic strategic plan.
We had these in the email, right?
Yes, so you might not need one. I was unable to print one successfully, so I said surely somebody over there can tell me.
I love your coat, Rachel.
Thank you.
I'm gonna say that.
I have a black one somewhere. I don't
Ready,
know
have
where
you been?
it's
Good to see
from.
you.
Yes, good to see you. Printed out all this stuff.
I bet you
And
did.
all your- Like, I love your vibe, but I love the color that.
Tried to,
Thank you. I'm just gonna go with.
tried to stay on.
Well, it's solid gray and fat, but I can't see that.
I'm walking
When I see one or two of myself from behind, I'm like,
Yes.
My dad's sisters were gray at 18.
Oh, wow.
rest of these problems.
Well, I need my laptop for.
No.
And I mean, it's that white is the predominant color in the front, then it's a little soft. I'm telling you, if you just, I'm ready.
it's saving me a lot of money.
Look, I learned that about natural hair. Do what you want. And then you don't do it. Let it do what it wants to do. The haircut is probably the most important part. Get a cut you like, and your hair always looks great.
Very fine. I meant to tell you, I have a brick for Nancy Grayson, just in case anybody wonders or
We
whatever.
wanted to reach out to her about some of the rap.
So I did that and she was delighted.
I know she is. Like, one thing I can say about Nancy, I've not had a lot of public interaction with her, but I do know of her involvement in history, even from Rapoport to being an Elm business owner. She should have a lot of pride in what she was able to start, but also that she was able to let others take it and carry it further. Like, she didn't hold it like, no one can come and it has to be this. And so I do have great respect for where she began the ideas and how it's grown, because she's like, you know what, and people have nurtured it along the way.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay, y'all ready?
Let's
All right.
do some.
No, just that.
Is Stephanie on here?
Mhm. Yes. Okay, so we are recording it though.
That's what I heard.
Okay,
Six people.
Okay, so we're getting ready for the board training. We are recording this for the board members who are not present. They will have other homework that they need to do as well.
And since you're present, you will not have to do that homework. You will have a brief homework assignment. Okay, I've met everybody in the room now. I've known some of you for many, many years. Stephanie Kuchera, Field Service Agent, Region 12. And I have Dr. Mark Parsons and Nick West, and they will come up at their respective times. But we're going to jump in. I know you all did the homework, but I did ask Dr. Miniman to print out a copy of the strategic plan, the academic strategic plan, since I could not print it successfully. So you've already done this, but just for a moment, let's each share something that's on the brochure that you're proud of about Rapoport Academy and why. What's something that stands out to you? Anybody want to go first? Dr. Newman, you go last. Neil?
So for me, the demographics that look like Waco, are representative, a lot of times, I think, or it's maybe not a lot of times, but there are times where charters can be kind of extractive or can be monolithic. So have a representative population, I think.
Anybody else? I like the word pipeline.
Pipeline.
It's a testament to Rapoport's commitment to the long game and cultivating, nurturing that kind of language.
I'll go next. I love the Every Raven every day. It has the envisioned student experiences, but when you go into the school, you really see that the recognition and attention for each kid, that they receive the right things that they need to feel like they are a part of the community, that they are recognized for their individuality, and that they bring something unique to the classroom. I love that as we kind of grow our curriculum, or we're growing our knowledge base with our kids, that we still keep that it is important to address the individual every day.
Yeah, I thought under the every Raven every day, that I thought those 3 points under the envision student experience, love how they encapsulated the vision, our mission, and our core values was all in a readable context to show that there's continuity between all of that. And so I thought, to me, every Raven every day embodied those values.
Help me with her again, Shaquinta, okay. Try to remember, she did this and sent it in, since she's not here. She just said every Raven every day is where students are heard, seen, and respected. She said that's important because children have a voice regardless of their age, and too often we are the only decision makers, and speakers are the adults that are part of that. And teaching children to be silent removes their hope for a voice in their future. All right, I'm not gonna hit everybody in the room on all this because we've got a lot of content to cover this evening.
And the 3 of us are supposed to be predominantly quiet because it's y'all's.
Yeah, so I want to hear, okay.
She might let us chat.
You may have to push next in, or the arrow, okay? Next slide. All right, so record board training, next board training. Okay, so we already we know who we are. We're gonna go through governing board of charter schools. That was something I asked you to read ahead of time, a document I had not previously seen. Nick will come up and talk about charter school finance. I'll hit the accountability domain overview. You might be familiar with some of that through conversations with administrators. The people in the room from the district actually will talk about the academic progress monitoring, where they are on those various projects and initiatives. Dr. Parsons is going to hit the Texas strategic leadership, and then we'll talk about next steps.
It's working.
So it's working. Okay. So
Yeah.
I know you're familiar with this. Some of you are newer than others. Just as in an ISD, the first year, there are more training requirements. I'm not gonna read all these to you, but you can see law, finance, accountability of public funds. That would be like when you do your audit report. That's not something we'll talk about. A lot of our time tonight will be spent on other accountability, health and safety. You have that opportunity to do that TEA Learn school safety course there. That should be something you all do. The Open Meetings Act, public information, and then this, what we call EISO, evaluating and improving student outcomes. I don't think we've ever done that, have we? It's not coming to my mind right now. So that's, it says 3 hours. It is pretty intense as far as conversations go about the academic accountability side, the role of the board, and what effective governance practices look like. So we might think about that
We did that when we did Lone Star.
in future years. When you all did Lone Star governance, that was encompassed in that. I don't know if you're still practicing Lone Star governance, so.
In some of the things we are, but we're actually due to come back to it again.
Okay, all right. So just kind of keep that in mind. But again, in subsequent years, 6 hours from any of those modules that you all might participate in. So trivia questions. The name of the entity that received the charter for Rapoport Academy. I shared this with someone the other day and they did not know the answer.
East West.
Waco.
Y'all know the
East
answer.
Waco.
There you go.
Innovative
There it is.
school.
Yeah.
Click.
East Waco Innovative School.
And there is the year. It was 1998. All right, next
If
question.
you ever forget, it's East Waco ISD.
That I remember, but I
Uh-huh.
was.
East Waco.
East Waco
Okay.
ISD. Nancy named it that way on purpose, so that it
Okay.
was
Okay.
Waco ISD,
Make-
Fosterville ISD, East Waco ISD. Innovative School Development Incorporated.
All right, how many students were at Rapoport that very first year?
Yeah, that's what I'm. Was it
18.
12?
Very close.
You're close. Somebody told me 6 this weekend when I shared the trivia.
They're close. It is this one.
8.
16?
16. All right, I knew we'd get it eventually.
Yeah.
16. There it is.
16.
Okay, next question. What college, everybody knows this, was in Waco?
Yes.
Late 1800s to 1990s, it currently houses the secondary students in your admin offices.
All, yeah.
Baldwin College, and what's the visual reminder? The history of the college that still remains here
That's
in
one
this
of them.
building today. Oh, what?
The fountain?
I don't know about the fountain.
Tiger mural.
The Tiger mural, I have a picture of right there. I didn't know about the fountain. Where is this located?
Right
In
from
the front.
Oh,
big
okay.
fountain.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and I just think this is real unique. She took me on a tour years ago and showed me that.
Where is that?
Right here in the stairwell. right
Is it
there.
really? Okay, I'll have to, okay.
And
you
you'll see
can-
how they're-
Okay.
I just like
Okay,
Okay,
good. Okay.
cues at Rapoport are as follows. I heard someone laughing.
I like it.
It's false. What's wrong with it?
Stick to it, isn't it?
It is.
Hard work.
Not.
Thank you. It's okay. It's false. There they are. Oops, each bullet as it comes. Hard work was the correct answer. But see, that's what I call it.
I don't know, I like stick to it.
So,
Uh-huh.
if you want to change it,
Spelling test.
I would just like a little credit for that. Okay, so another piece, that was just kind of for fun, another piece of our homework was to look at those 3 words that are your vision. And it is on your board. Connect, cultivate, champion. And I think I gave you 2 questions because this was part of the pre-work reflection. What does that look like and sound like? And how does it fit into your role as a board member? Connect, cultivate, champion. What does it look like and sound like? And how does that fit into your role? And I know you're not here every day on the campus. What does it look like and sound like? Maybe based on what you see, what you talk about. How do those words fit here? Were any of you all a part of the process where those 3 words were selected?
Even when you were a parent.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think that was probably like our first
When we
year.
redid the strategic plan,
Yeah.
that would have been in 21.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I feel like, yeah.
5 years or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we were.
Worked in that building.
Happened around COVID.
Uh-huh.
These
Yeah.
three were the only ones that were here.
Yeah. With the OGs.
Experience.
Yes, yeah. It's seasoned.
What she's really asking is, when you think of those three words, what would you want to see on the campus? Like, what would you want to see in the district?
Or what do you see? What do you hear?
I would say there's a lot of support again for each student. Being a parent of a student and watching, interaction, I think I get more frustrated when I get a call about my kid than the person calling me. I know, and it's very funny, but I'll tell you what, there was an incident on the playground and my son he pushed another kid back harder than he was pushed. And Dr. Page called and she's like, I just want to let you know, I'm talking to him and this is going on. And I'm like, no, you didn't. She calmed me down. The teachers have shown me how to connect better with my kid. Yeah, we're talking to them. And I want you to know what we're saying, but don't you, and she never says it, but I feel this, like, don't you make them feel like they cannot come back from it. You correct them and keep them going. Let's keep it positive. So there's been a couple of times where I've been like ready to run up there and the calming voice on the other end is like, we got you over here. They're going to be all right. You make sure when you come that you're all right too. Okay, you're right. So, and I mean that, like, it really has helped because by the time I get there after school and not running up there, we have a talk about it in the car. And that's something that also happens, like they give you conversation starters for your kids, how to connect. And so you really can do that as an overwhelmed parent. Take your time and respond later because you know that you can trust the people there are doing what's best for your kids and you can learn a little something. Thank you.
Great
I'm
example.
scared.
So are we.
But she's firm, so that's what I'm saying. I'm like, oh, she, and
So when we brought our Baylor students here, and Dr. Ellis was giving us the tour around the middle and secondary campuses, the things that they were really blown away were the entrepreneurial and preparing for college career and life, just seeing all the unique, and which goes to innovative practices, right? Like all the unique classrooms and the different experiences that they can have here. And these are kids that were just out of high school themselves. So, their high schools didn't have a lot of the things that they had here. And then just from experience, I know the small class sizes is an innovative practice like that to me, which is not something that people think of as innovative because we think innovative has to be like technology or something really forward thinking, but just the idea that we're going to focus on a smaller group of kids because that's how we can build relationships. That's how we can best serve our students. To me, illustrates some of that innovation. So I think just walking the halls, you get to see a lot of those. You would see every element.
What about your role as a board? What is your role in connect, cultivate, and champion? Because we could probably come up with a lot of examples and I could turn it over to them. What does this look like every day here, day in, day out, boots on the ground? But your role as a board member, connect, cultivate, champion.
I see it supporting leadership and faculty to be able to exercise those fully. As those are kind of our bedrock. How we remain connected to those as we make decisions, but really so that the leadership, the people with the expertise can do the job better and more joyfully, or not,
And you said it,
more
it's
real.
their job.
Yeah.
We're here to support them. We're not here to go be the principal over that campus. We're not there to go teach fifth grade math. It's our job to support. And you guys do a great job of that. Great conversation earlier on this. Anybody else role as a board on any of these?
I think the composition of the board helps with the connections. Intentionally parents, teachers, folks in the community, folks with different backgrounds and experiences. It just ensures that that connection happens in a way that can support everyone else doing their job.
And I've been here with you for years, but to my colleagues who, I know he's been here, for a meeting when they did their TSL year one. Rachel, remind me, you represent with
Public
I'm sorry,
policy, I'm with the Syntax African American Chamber of Commerce.
Emily, healthcare,
Baylor?
Baylor, Grady,
Finance.
finance,
K-12,
education.
education.
Mhm. We also have legal, we have at-large,
Right.
other at-large business and industry.
Okay.
Awesome.
So the other piece of your homework before I turn this over is this piece about governance. Key takeaways. It was the one that had this circle on the back, and I forgot to give you the note-taking document. Rachel, if you'll just take one out. Have it around. And I did bring copies of this little document, the governance one. Yes, and we would have had it on the side of the sheet. Initial on the left, please, after you check your email address. So you're also getting the one that has the circular graphic on the back side. Just takeaways, we won't spend a lot of time on this, but it was an interesting document I just ran into. I know you're thinking, wow, that's 4 years old, you just saw it, in 2021. So looking at how ISD boards differ from charter boards, key takeaways. Anybody?
I noticed that there were not a lot of similar things within regular ISD.
Mhm.
Like that wording kept being the same. No similar vetting for ISD boards or not, that type of thing.
Yeah, and oftentimes we hear out of some of the smaller communities, especially, our board members won't show up, what do we do? There's really nothing they can do. But in your situation, you are really held to a tighter standard, if I can say that. And something I learned that I was curious of, and I should have asked you ahead of time, Dr. Newman, is that these names and individuals, are their credentials of some kind submitted to TEA prior to joining? How does that work exactly? No? Because on the outside of this circle.
I wrote that down as.
You noted that,
Oh,
the education.
Yeah.
Applicant, that's the application for opening new charter school, the screening of the members, the one right above that.
Mhm.
So what does that look like?
So every year we do a governance report. Those things you do in every December and you fill out and are you a registered voter or not? Have you ever been convicted of crimes of moral turpitude?
So that is their screening.
It's their name, it's their home address.
Okay,
So technically TEA looks at those and if they have any problems.
they would let you know. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We do that every single year.
Yeah, December 1, correct? Key takeaways, what do you notice? Anything surprise you?
One thing that was surprising to me was it said, that Texas public charter schools educate 6% of the state's public school students, but represent 67% of the state's top-rated school districts.
Yes, what do you make of that? What do you attribute?
I know, yeah. Well, it seems to me that there would be more either involvement within the school board or the community or more intentionality in educating, with the teachers and having, more involvement than you would in a typical independent school district. My thought on that, but.
Anybody else? Takeaway, what do you notice?
Some of these ideas would be really great for regular ISDs.
I'll just say again.
Yeah. Yes.
Schools of innovation,
Mhm.
right? Like places where ideas and best practices can be generated and then ideally expanded,
Mhm.
shared, brought about to other places, right? That's why Rapoport is the way that we are. So we need places of best practice recognition and success.
Yeah, so it does seem like there's two silos, charter schools and ISDs, and they don't really overlap. Which, I guess is the point, so to speak, but it seems like there could be some more collaboration, but.
We talk a lot and try to reinforce that concept that it is in public school. mean, it is public, they have these rules to follow, but they also have the charter they have to uphold. You've seen
Mhm.
charters that have been pulled where, trustees did not get their training hours, they got the slap on that, and then some other things happened, and that was just kind of step one into, you don't have a charter anymore. So you do have some stricter requirements that ISDs don't have to maintain.
Mhm.
Anybody else before we pass it off to my colleagues?
One of the things I think would be helpful for the board is with the districts of innovation that are out there now, there are a lot of things that charters used to have that now traditional schools also have the opportunity for. They don't necessarily select all the same ones, but to me, that is like the exact example of why charters were created in the first place. It's to try out some of those best practices and then make them available, because if they work here, they could potentially work in lots of different places. I will say, one of the reasons why there's those silos, Rapoport Academy can just about go anywhere and be fine. We can be accepted, we can sit at the same tables and all that because we're a non-expansion, non-replication, lab-based model, right? Where not all charter schools are that way. And I think that's where you come with some of the rub, right? Like you won't see Rapoport Houston, Rapoport Dallas, Rapoport San Antonio. We are here. This is Rapoport, this is what we do. 950 is our cap. Like we're committed to small class sizes, small grade level sizes as we move through. And that's originally what kind of the impetus was for those initial charter creations way back, right, in the late 90s. So where you get some of those silos is when you start getting a lot of expansion and a lot of replication in a lot of places, and suddenly you become a big competitor. And that naturally creates division and barriers between competitors, right? And we don't see ourselves as competitors. We see ourselves as a place of innovation, really truly honoring the lab school model. And so I think that's one of the reasons why we, Rapoport, look different than some charters, and there's lots of variation within charters. But this is who we are and what we do. And that's why I don't think we experience the same level of animosity with our peers that some schools do and some communities have. Because that's just not our mission. And we're not, even though, yes, we have 900 kiddos, obviously those kiddos came from a district somewhere or homeschool somewhere, right? We just don't experience the same because everybody knows that we're in it for this purpose, for best practice generation, for school improvement, meaning student outcomes, right? That's what we're doing.
I think that's on mute again, so
That's on you.
The TV's muted.
The TV's muted, but this is perfect.
And Pizza, I have one more comment on that about this particular document. Charter schools have higher standards set for district-wide staff, students, and families with an approach toward excellence versus what she read to be a more basic approach to the public ISDs. She said she feels like the charters prepare students for keeping excellent practices as a standard as they move on after high school into life.
I would just say good charters do that.
Good charters do that. Okay, Nick West, school finance.
You need that other presentation?
No,
not yet.
No, it's just,
You
it's,
just kind of point right at that level.
all right. There. Yeah, all right, so we're gonna quickly touch on some things about school finance. This is some overview stuff. If there's any questions that you have, I'm a former superintendent, but then also a school finance agent. So what's unique about our job at the service center, or at least what I do, is I see not only just charter schools, but independent school districts across the state of Texas, and really the way that the state uses the funding formulas to try to create balance, whether the student is sitting at Rapoport, the student is sitting at Midway, or the student is sitting at Sierra Blanca way out near El Paso at a different time zone. That's the intent of the school funding formulas, no matter what ISD or public charter that is dealing with, that is really the intent of what it's trying to do. But then, of course, because of the way that the funding formulas themselves work, it creates a unique situation for charters. And there's actually a document that is in there. It can be sent to you guys. It's something that I found that it kind of works to simplify it, but hopefully with some of the things that we talked about this evening very quickly, we can simplify some even more stuff when it comes to school funding formulas and the way that they work. Not only the charters, but then the way that they work with school districts. But charter school boards are trusted with responsibility to ensure the school is well managed and fiscally sound. Fiduciary duties fall into 3 different categories: duty of care, duty of loyalty, the duty of obedience.
Feels like you're getting married then.
Yeah.
Long statement, but encapsulates what's happening with school funding when it comes to charter school. Charter schools in Texas receive funding from the Foundation School Program, or a lot of times you'll hear this sometimes as a technical term, FSP, That seems ridiculous, but people use that as also many acronyms we have in education. When it comes to funding, you hear FSP a lot, or foundation. The amount of state funding a Texas charter school receives is based on its average student daily attendance and their program participation. These allocations are based on attendance counts, which are collected every 6 weeks. Our schools are responsible for accurately reporting their enrollment data. The manner in which this data is reported affects the charter school's funding, and if reported inaccurately, can result in audit findings or a material breach of contract, even resulting in a school closure. That's a long narrative to say one thing. What is the main driver of charter schools, and honestly, schools across the state of Texas? What's the main driver?
Attendance.
Students. Yes, students. Yeah. There are now 8, I think it truly is 8 states that fund directly off of attendance compared to enrollment. But even if it was enrollment, attendance, whatever it is, main thing is students. All funding goes with students. Now, there's variations you may have heard about, and this is the main thing I have to deal with, is the state funding formula template, which is this huge, large, it's 8 megabytes that has to be sent out. It's got 30, well, it's probably really 100 tabs that are in. It's a huge Excel file to calculate the funding formulas for independent school districts. For charters, it's a little bit more simpler, but let's kind of talk about why, and it kind of leads into some of the other discussion points we may have. For instance, for your own property taxes, and that's the main reason that template for school funding for independent school districts is so large, is because they collect taxes. But that doesn't mean it's an isolated thing or different. That was one of the things with the handout. I kind of want to, as you read through it, some of the stuff we talked about, you kind of highlight some of the things that they might be talking about. They're a little bit different than really what's going on, I guess you could say. So the largest reason for all those calculations for independent school districts is because they collect taxes. But that taxes just goes into the funding formula as a portion of what the district is bringing as their part of the taxes, or as their part of the funding formula. But in the end, how much an independent school district gets or how much a charter gets is based on a true entitlement for that district. The largest one thing that you hear is getting into a little bit of the weeds, but you hear of tier 1 funding. That is equal across all districts, charters, everything. The taxes go into a share of that. So a local or an independent school district collects their share of taxes that go towards paying off that full entitlement, and the state brings in the rest. In a charter, it's the difference there. There is no local tax collections. So the entire thing, the entire funding formula for, let's just start with tier 1 before we get into something else here in just a second, is out of the foundation. Now, you could say, okay, well, that means that charters are completely funded by a foundation. They get no taxes, so that means it's a burden to the state. That's incorrect, because here's the one thing about tax collections. This kind of gets into a little bit more. How much the state will collect in property taxes this year is truly set. I mean, there are some delinquent, there are some people that are not going to pay their taxes, but the amount of property taxes that the entire state is going to collect this year is set and established by the property values and the taxes that are levied against those. No matter where the kids are. 500,000 kids could show up in Texas tomorrow, and the amount of taxes is going to remain the same. So the portion that the independent school districts are giving towards that as taxpayers, no matter if they have kids in school, not, that discussion, everything like that, it truly is a set number, okay? The remaining portion of funding for students now comes on a burden to the state. So it doesn't necessarily matter where that student is seated at, be it as I gave the example of Sierra Blanca or Midway or Rapoport or where I was a superintendent in Little Dime Box. It doesn't matter where that student is at. The amount of funding that is generated is by where that student is at for that district. So again, the tax portion, although that is a part of the calculations for independent school districts, that's why you have the large complication to it. There is a second complication to it as well, is that school districts do have one choice in this, and you possibly have seen this in papers and everything else like that. They do have a choice of the amount of taxes that they can raise. There's a portion they have to tax no matter what, or they have huge penalties. There's a portion that is elected to be for an independent school district, and so that's why you have, if you were to go and look and say, well, why does this district have so much revenue per student compared to this student? Or why does charter have this much revenue compared to this, all these different districts? It's because of that ability for those extra, they're called pennies, right? Because that's how they come out on your tax statement. They're pennies. Charters don't have that ability, but what does the state do? Because if all that charters were able to do was get that one guaranteed portion, then they would be heavily underfunded, correct? Because the districts have the ability for those pennies. Well, what the state does is it actually gives charters an average across the state. So your funding formulas actually do have a tax rate calculation in them. It's flat. So you do get what's considered. So you have the tier one, as we gave as an example. You have the tier two that charters do get. It's a portion. So it's actually based on, if you were to go and look into the funding formula way into them, as you can tell, I've gotten a little bit too far into them, correct? But there are mechanisms and there are multipliers in there as if you did have a tax rate, because otherwise you would be significantly unfunded. So where a charter ends up falling at is kind of average across the state of Texas. In fact, there are districts that are around you that you guys are actually, because of the funding formulas, you're actually a little bit higher than where they have, as a district, have elected to be. It's just the way the funding formulas work. But charters, since you can't levy any type of taxes, have to have somewhere where they put you. And so you guys, or charters, everybody stays at a one portion of that additional funding. But in the end, what is the main driver of how much you make? I mean, that's getting way into the funding formulas. The largest thing is where are your students? Where are the students sitting wherever they are in the state of Texas? But why that large, complicated formula? Because what's the number one thing as we get into a legislative session? What's the number one place where the legislature tries to adjust your taxes, tries to adjust how much you pay, your homestead exemptions? It's actually always within the school funding formulas. Why? Because it just takes a vote. So that's why as we get into this legislative session, when they start talking about they're going to make changes, and they would affect, I mean, the main term that you will hear that affects charters, independent school districts, everything, is this one term that will constantly be talked about, which is the basic allotment. The changes to the basic allotment. That is the main factor that all formulas run off of, be it for charters, be it for ISDs. It runs off of that basic allotment number. So as they talk about all the different things they get into, because if they say, well, we're going to reduce property taxes or we're going to change the homestead exemption, none of those things do anything to the actual funding of the school. They just change how much the state is going to collect in taxes. What ultimately drives everything is that term of basic allotment. Yes, sir.
So when it was floated that there would no longer be a property tax,
Yes.
which I found virtually impossible because I didn't know how anything else could operate without a property tax.
Yes.
So how would that have impacted school funding?
Well, the largest thing that it would do is that it's a revenue source. I mean, it's a portion. So right now the state pays about 38% of the total bill for the students across the state of Texas. So taxes across the state, that's why I kind of started with that example in case we got to this, is again, the amount of taxes is established. What happens with that 38% is, again, if I gave the example of 500,000 students arrive in Texas, well, then that percentage for the state would actually go up because there are no more taxes that can be collected. But if you were to remove property taxes, there's 62%. In fact, that's the reason that your tax bill has been changing so much over the last couple of years, because you pay property taxes for whatever school district you live in. So the two main factors that have been going is they've been reducing the amount of pennies, again, that term, right? If you look at your actual bill, it's went down from anywhere, the highest is $1.50, but $1.17. It's all these weird things that go into those funding formulas. But the reason that has been going down, it's a term you'll hear all the time in this legislative session, it's compression. The reason for that, though, that they're doing that is one, it takes a vote, hands up, hands down, move on with life. It's easy, hey, we saved you in property taxes. But they're trying to change that percentage. They've been wanting to raise the state's percentage that it is contributing to the school funding formulas or the total bill that the state of Texas has to pay. The issue is that when they did that, which the main time that happened was 4 years ago, it went way down the amount of pennies that you paid upon, but your tax bill didn't go down, right? Not at all, because our property values went way up. That's why in the last legislative session, what they did it again, because the idea that they had to, hey, we can reduce our portion of paying. And again, this is looking at it, kind of the way I want to talk to you guys, if you can't tell, is like an entire state totality stuff, because that's really the way that everybody gets funded. It doesn't matter where the student's at. That gets complicated only by one factor, and that's the amount of pennies that the district is charging. Otherwise, this kind of breaks down to a simple thing. Anyways, so they did try to do a little bit, as you probably noticed, your taxes kind of went down a little bit, the pennies or, what you're supposed to pay, but then they changed the homestead exemption, right? So your homestead exemption went that you had from just 4 years ago, 25,000 was not taxable up to now 100,000. Well, that honestly was a big factor in everybody's reduction. Now, the reason they don't like to do that in the legislature is that it does take a constitutional amendment. If you remember when you go and vote, it usually passes by a huge margin because everybody's going to take that's going to help them personally for the property tax they have to pay. So it usually does pass, but it is a constitutional amendment. But when something like that happens, so there are formulas now that are in there because whenever the state passes a law, it doesn't want to hurt any district, charter, or anything. So they put in the little hold harmlessness and all these provisions. So there's now funding formulas that were put into that template that now have to be there for 30 years. Because if somebody sold a bond with their property value expected at 25K homestead, and now it's all the way up to 100K, they would be losing out on that taxes. So now the state has to run a funding formula to make up that difference for bonds can be 30 years. There are things that are in that crazy funding formula for ISPs that go back to the
Except for
50s.
charter schools.
No, charter is one template, you dump it in because, again, there's so many things that are just averaged out across the state. And the only reason for the difference in complication, as I said, is because of the local tax collections. Because all that funding formula is doing for independent school districts is it is just figuring out what is the district's portion. As far as what the funding is for the charter or anybody is driven by one thing. The students in the what classrooms are in. This is your career and technology, your special education. That's what it means by where they're at. It can be compensatory education, bilingual services. All those have multipliers. You go off the full-time equivalents, but all that's doing is depending on, again, where the kid's sitting at, what type of classroom he's in, and where he's at in the state of Texas, is just adding up as to what is the school share. What does it take to fund the school based on the funding formulas? It doesn't matter. Additional complication becomes if there's taxes that are being collected. So for a charter, that's why it literally is one spreadsheet, you dump it in. And it said in the previous slide, charters report their 6 weeks data each 6 weeks. I was amazed by this the first time I ever saw it because it is literally uploaded almost like a spreadsheet. Like we have this many kids sitting here, we have this many kids sitting here. Clerical errors can happen. They do happen because you're just typing the numbers in. But those are put in every 6 weeks because that's how the state funds schools is based on 6 weeks. And then at the end of the year, it figures out based on what your enrollment was each 6 weeks. But the charter still sends up all of its data at the end of the year. And so while you're putting in that information clerically, it still settles out with the actual data that comes in from the school. So that's what I was talking about. You could possibly have sanctions or something like that against against the charter, because let's talk about this from if you wanted to manipulate it, what could you do? You could put that you have a lot of kids, and this is unfortunate, this has happened. You could put in that you have a lot of kids, interest rates are very well, you make a lot of interest off of it for the state. And that's not unique to charters.
We don't do that.
That actually,
We have
the reason that's also not in is not charters. Independent school districts used to do that. There's also like everything. Why is there a rule or why is there a law? Somebody tried to go around it, right? There's plenty of stuff like that that's independent school districts. Because school districts used to do that too. Because at one time, the funding formulas, this is why it goes all the way back to the 50s. School districts used to be funded off the number of teachers they had. Their FTEs, their teacher was the funding formula for independent school districts.
So this is why.
mentioned
So I was just gonna say, this is why during budget season, I have talked a lot about, we get the average. We get the average. The average does include understanding of how much comes from local taxes to the traditional ISDs. It comes from state supported funding to the traditional ISDs. But average means we get from the state more than half and less than half, really, across the state. The places where there's really kind of disparity is things like facilities funding. There is still disparity in that, pretty significant in some places. There's some other little pockets of things, but for the most part, we get the average. Half and half, better than half and when worse than half. But we have to report every 6 weeks when we send it in.
So do we get our funding all at one time, or do they?
No, you guys are, for the most part, charters are paid by, like you put in your data for the 6 weeks and they settle your payment as you're gonna get equal payments each month.
Got it.
And they really try to do that. That's different compared to independent school district because independent school districts are collecting taxes. There's a weird flow for school districts. We're always having to watch cash for them. For charters, it's a little bit different because you essentially are getting almost a 1 month, because if a charter doesn't have a large amount of unassigned fund balance, or it's a very new charter, it doesn't have the ability to go month to month to make payroll. It's essentially waiting on that payment from the state to continue to move forward until it builds up any type of reasonable fund balance to have on reserve to make
Got
it
it.
from 1 month.
Okay.
I kind of liken it to kids with chores.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
kids with chores, they expect to get a certain amount
Yes.
every month. If
Right.
they do a little extra chores, a few extra students, then they're gonna get a little more. But
Right.
if they have a little less, next time you tell me I'm gonna look at it, then you're gonna get a little less.
Yeah.
And so it's more of a fluid, consistent thing with charters, as opposed to a stagnant and then an update. It's more kind of
Got
as you
it.
go, which is why that data is so important. It's also why that push for attendance is so important, but also likewise, why I've been talking with you guys so much about our cap at 950, and we started this year at 900. We're at like 851 right now. So at 950, our enrollment is done. And where does revenue come from? Added revenue, either from the state or from enrollment. So at that point, the board's really gonna have to be thinking about raises and continuity and advancement and all that, because at 950, just increasing the student count is not an option. So that's something that is very unique to a non-expansion, non-replication charter school. Because a lot of charter schools, we'll just grow, we'll just open up another campus, we'll add to the classes, we'll create another building, we'll do whatever. That's not what Rapoport is. Likewise, we obviously cannot depend on the state to fund us or to update funding based on inflationary rates, right? So that's just something we are gonna have to think about when we talk about fiscal responsibility, when we get to 950, which is, I mean, if we continue to grow like we are, that's 3 years from now. It's not like 10 years from now. That's coming up.
No, and.
You just mentioned, you see that little snip of that little thumbnail? That's a handbook on the charter school site on TEA. And I think it's called Governance Training Optimization. You have to go all the way down to the bottom of the page. But that's a good resource if you want to look at that. Finance is just one piece of the content.
So some other funding formulas as well do come in, or sorry, some other funding does come in from federal, Title I, Title II, Title III, but it's something that Dr. Newman highlighted is a challenge. And you've seen this, I mean, highlight this on being in the press. The funding formulas do not have any inflationary things added to them at all. In fact, the funding formulas for charters and schools across the state of Texas were actually developed in June of 2019. That's when they were established and set up. So the rule has changed quite a bit. They were set and put in place for the 2019-2020 school year, which ended in March that year. Since then, we've had other federal funding.
The cost of things haven't changed since
No, not
then.
at all.
No,
There's
not at all.
been a couple of adjustments that are deep within the funding formulas and it has to do with those enrichment pennies. Again, charters are getting some of that as well as independent school districts, but that's about the only main. So that's why this year, as you watched in budget season across the state of Texas, a lot of districts were talking about, and we're going into the legislative session, we're talking about deficit budgets that they were adopting. In so many cases, that's because there has not been an adjustment. Also, too, if the main driver is students, and you go year over year and you have the exact same number of students, or you're down 20 students, your revenues are down. There is no way to capture new revenue. So if you remain at the exact same number of students, which was exactly what you're highlighting, is, what does that look like? Because all revenue is tied directly to students. So once you become flat, as many independent school districts are, especially in our rural areas, or in urban areas, what is the largest challenge that they have been facing? You've been watching the news. Many of them their enrollment is way down. So again, if it's all driven to students, then you can see where that becomes a major issue. And that's why we get into, talk quickly about federal funding, but this is the handout. It's an easy, if you can go.
I'll share that with you.
Okay,
It's a
good.
simple
Okay.
PDF. It's a neat, quick read, 3 or 4 pages. I just thought it'd be something to kind of have for you. It's a lot of stuff that we've talked about tonight. Some of the things, hopefully, when you go through it, some of the little things I was kind of pointing out, you might see, with how it's describing that stuff and some of the things that we've already kind of highlighted.
I can take this presentation and drop it in their drive, correct? Okay, I'll just
Okay,
take this
yeah.
whole presentation and drop it in
Perfect.
tonight's meeting,
Yes.
so that you guys would have access to any of this. It's a hot link. So when you go back to the slide, you can click on it,
Because
and it takes you right
I was
to it.
also curious about the spreadsheet,
How
the funding. Yeah. Yeah.
But you can
Is
actually
that-
type
is that
in
on-
Region 13 school finance, you'll be able to find it. Or not, see it.
The big crazy one?
Uh-huh,
the-
yeah,
really
yeah.
big part is you have to know a district, this county district number.
Oh,
But that's fine. Those are pretty easy to find. If you go look at anybody's accountability, it runs.
You just tell me who you want to see and I'll give it to you.
okay, good.
No, there's
Yeah,
no
sure,
place
yeah.
say that, I just don't add anybody. You can look
Yeah,
at
no,
mine,
no,
I'm not-
I never knew anybody from Don Box, the first one.
Same story too in another time.
Yeah.
Anyways, so accountability within the financial system is through the Charter First Integrity Rating System of Texas. You have to do a presentation on this each year. School districts across the state of Texas have to do their financial integrity rating system report that is going out. To be honest, there's many different measures that it looks at. What is the largest one that drives everything within the charter and that drives it even for independent school districts? Reduction in enrollment. Reduction in enrollment and reduction of unassigned fund balance. Those are the two main triggers. If you go to look, unless something was in the audit, which you would have known about when you approved the audit as a board, correct? Outside of that, all those indicators, you would go through it and look at it. And whenever you see the report, you've looked at it and like, what does all this mean? There's two main drivers. Reduction in enrollment and in reduction in unassigned fund balance will start to trigger things throughout the rating system. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind to, again, keep it as a simplistic thing is that that's the main drivers. Once those two things start to happen, it starts triggering across this.
And that's one of the things we talked about. A lot of traditional schools this year passed deficit budgets. Charters aren't allowed to do that. So that's not even a thing that we can do. That calls up some pretty significant problems for charter schools. So we can't say, oh, we'll use fund balance to pay for salaries or things like that. So we have to have a balanced budget when we go in for that. We have a perfect charter first. And the great thing is for charters, that's actually represented in multiple areas of measurement for the state. So there's charter first, then there's the charter accountability module. There's some other things that they do through TEA for things like our renewals or our midpoint check-ins, things like that. And so that charter first is really wrapped up in a lot of places for charter school measurement.
So how this goes, preliminary ratings are issued mid-August. Those are just preliminary. The ratings are able to be appealed, but then the final ratings are out in mid-November. And then failure after appeals of charter first is considered a strike under Texas Education Code, which gets into, accreditation charters. But again, going into the deficit budget, all that stuff, it again shows where those two main measurements. And it's the same thing even for an independent school district. Almost, again, it's three things, but unfortunately we have districts that call us a Region 12 that have issues within their first. And what's probably the first thing that they say, hey, we have this low score. More than likely their enrollment is declining or more than likely their balance. It does become issues, but you can see where that can be.
Just
It can't
remember,
happen.
for charters, academic or financial strikes, 3 in 3 years, either kind, and your charter is mandatory shutdown. So that's why we watch those very carefully. It's district accountability, district financial accountability.
And so what is the main data that is used for that? It's your audited financial report. Again, as we talked about, one instance would be if something is founded in your audit, when that is presented to the board, you would be aware at that time. But then also this is where enrollment data does come out of this. Why is that easy to be able to track? I mean, one, you do have your PEMS report that goes in, which is another one. But then also too, if your funding is going down year over year, then you know that there's an enrollment issue. And then also too, your unassigned fund balance, which, as we talked about too, is not an easier thing unless you're a rapidly growing charter or school district to build. So this kind of just talks about each of the data reports. We talked about the PEMS financial data. That's all the student data that is sent up at the end of the year. There's some that just went in a fall upload. That's a little bit of your budgeting stuff. But most of this all is going to happen in the summer. That's also when the state finds out how many students you have and what its final settle up with you is. Most of the time in charters, it's a very small amount because you've been reporting your data each 6 weeks. School districts do not do that. Independent school districts, they don't send everything until June. So sometimes that portion of that term settle up can be way off because the way that the state finds out about them and what they've initially reported. Since charters are reporting that every 6 weeks and receiving those payments, the settle up or the final, hey, this is how much you owe us, this is how much we owe you, is usually very small. If not, we talked about that could be an issue. And then you also have the charter first report, your audited financial report, and your financial compliance worksheet. All of this goes to the financial data alignment cycle as to the ratings, but then also the financial standing of your district. So, what's the main things to track, as we talked about, the budgeting process, the discussions that you have there, your student enrollment, and then also your audit report can be the main drivers for you to give oversight to the district's financial stability and strength. Any questions about school finance? I'll leave you all at that because you don't need me in curriculum. I haven't done curriculum
No.
accountability in a long time. So,
No,
like I said, I hope to give a little bit more of a general thing to give an understanding, overview of not only how it works within charter, but how it works across the state of Texas. But then what's most important, the main driver, students.
It's good. No, it's good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, The short answer is, if you have any questions about finance, that's the guy to call.
Yeah, yeah.
He can walk you through the spreadsheets in the background.
Yeah.
Just find something curious about.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yes. Okay, I know. It sounds like it. Yes. Uh-oh, okay.
Service last week. I usually have like a 10-15 minutes to just kind of say, hey, this is what's going on in the legislative session. Well, business leaders across the state of Texas have turned into like 1,000 questions. Like, well, hey, what about this? Because rarely do you. So I said, if there's any questions, and I'm happy to say, ask anything you want to know. I can explain it or additionally.
Yeah, sounds good. Good. Yeah, thank you.
All right, so ADF accountability system, we're just gonna do the 30,000-foot overview because we're gonna have plenty of time for your administrators to talk. So in that system, which has not really changed much, so some of this might be familiar, we look at 3 different domains: student achievement, school progress, and closing the achievement gap. The better of achievement or progress, so domain 1 or 2 counts for 70% of your rating, and then 30%, that's in federal law, that is domain 3, that's closing the achievement gap. So student achievement, just in a couple of quick slides, these terms might look familiar. If you have children in school or had children in school in the last few years, you might have seen these terms on a report. Masters meets, approaches did not meet. The legislature really wants us to anchor in this one here. The blue one meets grade level. And I always tell people, kind of look at the words that stand out. So like in this gray one, that's the highest level. What words stand out up here?
They are expected to.
Expected to succeed. So those are the kids that we just think, oh, they got this. How does it change right here in this one, in the blue meets? High likelihood. How is that different from this?
There's room for someone to slip through the cracks. There's somebody that may not need it, even though they look like they do.
But these kids, what kind of assistance will they need if they are earning masters?
Little to no.
Little to no. What's the difference right here?
They'll need some additional targeted short-term academic intervention.
Yeah, and sometimes board members say, well, what does that mean? What is short-term intervention? That's going to be local, depending on those kids, depending on that classroom, depending on what each situation. What kind of support might that child need? Now, what happens over here in the approaches column?
I did notice that it says passing standard for high school graduation requirements down there, but also said above that there's likely to succeed, but they're gonna need some targeted intervention. So it's like, you can make it, but we wanna make sure that we absolutely give them some intervention or academic. I guess my question is, it's passing for high school, but there's no opportunity to help them after that point. So we just kind of let them go at that.
Well, I'm gonna go back over here.
Sorry.
This term approaches, and I'm gonna pick on Rapoport Academy. Alexis, we had this conversation years ago. We don't use this term.
Mhm.
We're aiming over here. Technically, that's passing, but always just say like by the skin of your teeth.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm achieving here, even 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, the lower grades, these are aligned to SAT and ACT. They're using that as a data point to see how these kids are anchoring in college. And they're not gonna have to take that remedial math or the remedial English or whatever that class is called. But if they're over here, it's like they just barely made it. And
Well, the thought that we had, way back when we were establishing what we're focusing on, is if you're at meets and masters, you can go college, career, or military, right? Like you can do whatever it is you want to do. We can champion you in every direction. If you're at approaches, you may not have that opportunity because you may not meet entry requirements if you want to go somewhere. So our push is meets and masters so that anywhere you want to go, you can't go.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna ask Rapoport a question here. Did not meet grade level. Look at these words here. They are not expected to succeed. They're not likely to succeed without significant ongoing academic intervention. What does that look like here? Does that mean they come for tutorials twice a week for 30 minutes or an hour? What is that? Tyler or Jennifer? I mean, what is that significant ongoing academic intervention? What's an example of that here?
For elementary, we have win time, what I need time, which is every day.
Every
For
day.
kids in K through 4. And it could actually be any of those levels, because for those kids, it also counts as accelerated instruction, but it also, for the master's level kids and the meets level kids, accelerates. Like,
But it's also
Makes sense.
targeted school group work in the classroom. It's summer school potentially. It's depends on.
More. It's like,
Yeah.
these are.
We have a built-in our scheduled time called their lab classes for math and for reading, and so their students who need intensive instruction, it's an additional class period. And they attend, we make adjustments on the 9 weeks basis on our grading periods based on their progress towards that. Some stay most of the year, some get the needed intensive support in about a 9 weeks and are able to transfer out of that space. But it is additional during the school day time, that's intensive from a classroom teacher or an interventionist.
So those are the scores, if you will, or the labels or the levels at which students might earn after their test. So this has not changed since 2018, so we can anchor in this for years. Domain 1 student achievement. If I'm at the elementary or middle school, everything that I have goes towards that STAR test. I don't have other means for earning credits. If I'm down here at the high school or in a K-12 setting, like a real small school, for example, 40% STAR test, 40% college, career, military. This readiness is fixing to change to a P, college, career, military preparedness, and then 20% to my graduation rate. So that the high school or the K-12 is the only one that has some additional opportunities other than elementary and middle school with the STAR test. That's domain 1. Just an overview student achievement. School progress. This is looking at, are the campuses growing or are those students growing? Academic growth is part A. Part B is called relative performance, and it also throws in addition to STAR, your college, career, military preparedness. And this is a graphic that just shows year to year. So these students, let's say this is grade 3, they scored this, whatever this level might be here. The next year, the idea is we want them to move up. Notice in this last year now, we have double opportunities here. Low does not meet, high does not meet. Low approaches, high approaches. So that was added in as a component this past year. The relative performance side, that's looking at schools that are like us. I didn't say down the road, Bosqueville or La Vega or Conley, whoever's close to us. I said they're like us demographically. So we kind of anchor into this language here about economically disadvantaged. Here are the 5 letter grades. That campus is a real campus. This is a campus that's 95% economically disadvantaged. So we often talk about, wow, they're poor. The kids are poor. It's a poor neighborhood. It's a poor community. How are those kids achieving an A for their campus? So I toss that to you. What happened there?
We went and saw that campus. I can tell you
What happened? Explain this to me. They don't have any money. They don't have resources. What happened? What do you think happened?
I think they had really great teachers who worked with them consistently.
Really great teachers that worked with them. And we're not going to get into this tonight, but if we do the full 3 hour, we can do it in less than 3 hours. That EISO training, the evaluating and improving student outcomes, we talk a lot about how the role of the teacher is really reflected in this A to F system as we went through that, the test update and all the shit that we just went through. So really great teachers. What else? What often is kind of a gap with some of our children? What about their home life?
Parent engagement.
Parent
Yeah,
engagement.
parent engagement.
What do you do? How do you get them involved? Single working families, what do we do? So something is happening that is ensuring those children are successful.
Well, I'll tell you, there's was a really cool campus. Jennifer and I got to go down there and look at it, and if it's not that exact campus, it's pretty close to that exact campus that we got to go see. And it's part of a larger district. And it was really neat because as we walked through that campus, the level of student autonomy and leadership was incredible. The crazy thing is there were student teachers in almost every classroom, which was really awesome. And every teacher at that campus was on the TIA designation list. And so what the district had done is said, we're going to take our district resources and pool them together, take our best teachers and incentivize them by paying extra money by putting them at this really low performing campus. So this large district took the best of their teachers, paid them extra, plugged them in, took their student teachers, plugged them in, and then worked on making sure they had leadership-based, student voice-based curriculum all in that same spot. And that's where you get the 95% economically disadvantaged, but an A-level performance. Because as a district, they were able to take and really focus in their efforts and activities. And so what we walked out of it was a lot of really good things that we can implement. And Jennifer has already brought that to the campuses and started putting in some of that concept, that student voice concept, as we walk through that. Now, we don't have the ability to make all of our teachers TIA designated right now, or to pull from other campuses and bring them in. But we do have the ability to help some of them. So we're moving through the TIA process. We do have the ability to make sure that we've got student voice. We do have the ability to make sure that we're pressing for engagement, that we have curriculum that is aligned to this, the stuff you've approved tonight. So we're pushing on a lot of those things, but it was just really interesting to us because we're like, show us schools like us that are knocking it out of the park. And that was when we went to, and we're like, okay, that's a school like us, but it's not a school like us. And so it's been really interesting to look at our comparison groups. We looked at that, right? So to look at our comparison groups, to dig into some of those, because like us, according to TEA, doesn't necessarily mean like us holistically, but it still gives us good feedback. It still gives us things to work for. But as we look at it in our district improvement committee, or as we look at it as a district, like those are the kind of questions we have to dig into.
Well, what campus or district?
That was Aldine. Yeah. What was the name of that campus, Jennifer? Do you remember?
Goodman Elementary.
Goodman.
Yeah, it was an amazing campus. We actually tried to take another team back there and they told us no.
They probably get people beat down.
That's what they said. They said, we have too much. TEA said, you should go back to that campus. We're like, we tried. But it was fun to walk through that campus. It was so engaging and it was so inspiring. But that's one of those 95% economically disadvantaged and yet getting these crazy results. And it was beautiful walking through their classrooms.
And again, in the accountability system, the TEA supercomputers, they're gonna pick, did your campus do better on part A, academic, or part B, relative performance? And I'll just ask you this question before we go on. Why would it be important to compare campuses? I think she already kind of answered it with her visit. Why do you want to compare campuses based on the like or similar percentages of economically disadvantaged students? Why would that be beneficial?
It helps control for that home factor.
Okay, thank you. Anybody?
Neil could. Because the state assessment does a better job at predicting economics than it does predicting academics.
Short answer.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Tests are correlated with SES, whether it's STAR or whether it's SAT. So we know those relationships are there. And it's due to a lot of factors. So we want to compare.
not wrong
like
factors
groups,
necessarily,
because,
right?
yeah.
And the final one, the third domain, closing the achievement gap. Again, that is the federal piece there that is required and counts for 30%. We want to make sure all student groups are achieving at high levels. And we look at academic achievement, growth, graduation rate, and then progress in English language proficiency, and finally school quality and student success. I'm not going to read you all the pieces within that, but notice the meets language here. She's going to send you that slide deck so you'll have it in your notes. Meets, that's what the legislature said they want us to achieve. And then when we look at these student groups over here, won't read those to you, all students, 7 different racial ethnic groups, and you can read down here and look at these different groups. All of those, if they have 10 students, are counted in your rating calculation. It used to be 25. With 25, you might have some groups that did not meet that. But guess what? With 10, you're going to have more student groups that are feeding into your score calculations.
Is it students or tests?
test, I'm sorry, I say students, but it is tests. And so often we think, well, that a student takes a test, but it is 10 tests that count for you, yes. Domain 3 ratings, here are the super groups, all students, the 2 lower performing, and that is a misspelled word, that's not mine. Racial ethnic groups from the prior year, there's that minimum size. See, there it is, 10 students / assessments. And you're right, Dr. Newman, it is tests, but I always think students take the test. And then those high focus, and that's looking at an unduplicated count of all these other student groups. And then each group is scored on, this is like a continuum. Well, you just used to just have all these student groups listed on your domain 3 report with a yes or a no. But now they have these different levels of which we would expect them to achieve. Obviously, we don't want the 0. Long-term, we want them to get a 4. So it's showing a continuum. I personally like that because I'm a data nerd. Some people wanted the yes or the no. So all probably different schools have thought on that.
So essentially now you can get, no, but you're making progress.
You're making progress.
No, but you made a lot of progress.
We think about long-term, you know, it doesn't take for right here, we're getting there, but we want to move up to that 3 and that 4.
Or maybe you've already reached long-term goal, good job.
But you gotta stay there. How can I keep that group there? They might be here, but what if they drop to a 3 next year, maybe? So we gotta pay attention. So you all don't have to report back. I'm asking you to do this on your own time though. txschools.org. I love looking at this site. Like if we're driving to the beach in the summer and we pass their town, my husband will tell you, yeah, she really does. She pulls up that book and starts talking about it, and nobody in the car wants to talk to you about it. But I would encourage you to spend a little time looking at your school, looking at a neighboring ISD, wherever you might be. One glow, one grow. What do you think a glow is? Thank you. Doing well, we're shining. What about a grow? It's the work that we need to do. And then what is one question you have? And I'm encouraging you to bring that back, even if it's just for 10 minutes at a future meeting. When can you discuss that? Because I'm sure you have some opportunity, maybe when you call the meeting to order, you started, you get your food while everybody's eating, spend a few minutes talking about that. Again, pull up your school and pull up another one just for fun. So this is the piece where your administrators are going to do some updating on progress monitoring. So I'm just going to turn it to you. Do y'all want the clicker? Do y'all have something there?
Can they borrow your clear?
Yes.
Otherwise I'll click.
You gotta kind of stand like, I mean, it's fun.
At elementary. You were getting up, so I'll hold it up.
Okay. Stand close. Does it have a pointer?
No. Well, I don't think so.
Oh, it's elevation.
Oh, it does.
Mm.
Where's my dog?
Okay, I put together a state of the campus for elementary. So some of the things that I'm gonna talk through will be academics, behavior, attendance, teacher staff retention, and then a couple of other noteworthy items. All right, so these student outcome goals are a part of our academic strategic plan. So in the academic strategic plan, there's the baseline with the goals for the 5 years. This is the breakdown of the years along the way so that we can start to track them as we go. So we're in this year 1 target here. So this is 3rd grade. Ooh, I don't want to touch that. English language arts, this is 3rd grade math. And then it goes to CCMR and 8th grade. Okay, and so this, obviously we track more than this, but for the academic strategic goals, it includes 3rd and 8th grade. So our baseline was 21% and 14%. This is meets and above. So this goes back to what Stephanie was saying, that we're just looking at the meets and above. And our goals after 5 years would be 56 and 49%. So we broke them down. It's about 7%. On almost all of these, we did a +7-ish on them. Okay, and so we won't obviously have our end of year scores until school's out. I think we get the scores on May 30th or so. So right now, this goes back to the year 1 target. Okay, so if I go back, we're looking at the targets here. okay, from our baseline. And so I put the targets. These were our 23-24 scores. So we had 17% meets and above on third math, 22% meets and above on ELR. Our goal after year one was to go from 17 to 21. Well, again, this was our target from the last thing, okay? And then to 28. Right now, where we were in our fall benchmark on third grade math was 6% meets and above. Okay, so we are not close right now to that. Now, that's not entirely surprising. Our fall scores on math are typically lower than our English language arts scores on math, because for math, there's things that you just literally haven't been taught. English language arts builds on itself, especially once you know how to read, right? So for English language arts, we were at 23% already for meets and above. So we're already 1 percentage point over our scores for last year on STAR, which was encouraging for us. So the hope is that we will meet and exceed this 28%. If you look at approaching and above, we're at 62%. So the hope is that there is a large enough chunk of students that are sitting in that approaches category that we can get them to where they need to go. For math, if you look at approaches and above, we're 17%. So we've still got some work to do here on math, but that is not necessarily entirely surprising to us.
And just in case you're not familiar, so that benchmark they give is a whole year test that's given in November. So it's all information for the whole year
It's the end of year start.
that we give in November. So we don't expect them to know all of it.
Oh.
So 23% is really strong because we're already where we were at the end of the year last year and we're just in November.
And then for fourth math, we were at 8% meets and above. In 23-24, we're at 6%, so a little below that. Again, math is a little bit of a struggle for us at the moment and something that we're working on. Fourth ELR, we had 30% at the end of the year last year. We're at 13% right now, 48% approaches and above. So some bright spots, some areas that we need to continue to press into. We have not taken spring benchmarks yet. We'll take those February 18th and 20th. So we'll be able to see then from our early November scores to February, and then intervention between February and April when we take the start. Okay. So things that we're doing to address academics, as I talked about earlier, we have win time, what I need. All students in K-4 get win time every day. That's small groups in class. Sometimes we have pullouts. We use every additional person on campus for this. Teaching assistants, teachers, specialist teachers, coaches, everybody is coming in order to help in these various grade levels. For some grade levels, that sometimes we have 7 people coming in. So it allows us to have some really small extension activities or remediation activities for kiddos. We do have monthly meetings where we reevaluate placement. So we reevaluate where kids are, what they need, look at current data, and make sure that they're in whatever placement they need for that next month. We do MTSS tracking. This is our multi-tiered systems of support. We have done some different types of MTSS. Secondary and elementary they look very similar. We meet quarterly and we meet with teachers, and this is for teachers just to put plans, official plans into place for kiddos who are not progressing in a way that we believe that they should be and how we can help support them. So we do MTSS meetings with grade levels, and we also as an admin team look at that data to make sure that kids are not falling through the cracks for teachers. Something that we've done differently this year for all 3rd and 4th graders is we're putting them through an intervention. We're calling it a toolkit, but it's a supplemental curriculum called Short Big, and we are putting all 3rd and 4th graders through it. And it's basically just a reading writing toolkit. We're doing that just to help bolster that reading writing for them. So that's been a really helpful piece. We did use this in summer school last summer and found that to be really beneficial for students. We have instructional coaching for all teachers with our instructional coaches. We also are using what we call the D3 protocol, daily data dive, after each checkpoint that are happening with our instructional coaches and teachers. We have monthly math data review meetings as well as quarterly ELR data review meetings. So there's lots of things that we're doing in order to address the data as it comes for kiddos at elementary. Behavior. So there's a lot on here, but I put the data from 24 and 25 and 23, 24 on here so that you can see where we are with number of incidents. Okay, so these are incidents that have been put into Skyward. I will say for my deans of students, the number this year is quite different at this point of the year than last year. My deans of students were not as awesome last year with putting stuff into Skyward so that we could document it. So I've been working with them on making sure that it gets in, which also makes our numbers look more significant. I don't think that we are having a significant number more of behavior issues. I think they've just what was documented last year versus this year. So the number of students are here. It's broken down by gender from each of those. The breakdown is pretty similar from last year to this year, and then the racial breakdown as well as grade level. This was interesting to me because last year the grades that we struggled with, the most were pre-K and second grade, right? That's where the bulk of our stuff came through. And this year, what grades are those kids in? Kindergarten? Third grade, which is the same kids often. So we do have 6 students who are on probationary enrollment for behavior currently. Those would be students who would have gone through an expulsion hearing and be put on probationary enrollment for those behavioral infractions. So, and I'm going through this quick. If anyone has questions, just stop me. Some things that we're doing to address behavior. We have been doing a pretty significant student engagement training this year. We've been doing that through our TSL work with Region 12. And we are on training 4 that's coming in February. And it's really working to help teachers to rethink student engagement, which also helps them reframe disengagement. It works on a continuum to look at disengagement all the way up to engagement and everything in between. And I think it's helped our teachers really think of disengagement in a new way. Instead of saying that kid is not paying attention, it's, well, what am I not doing as a teacher? And that child is communicating to me something that I need to do differently. And it's helping it put it a little bit back on the teachers. And that has been really helpful for them. So that we have seen some changes in behavior for that. The 2nd through 4th grade campus, Dr. Page, she has actually taken it a step further and started using that the engagement continuum in one-on-one conversations with students that are struggling. She has been meeting with students individually, and then we've seen teachers, especially at the 2nd through 4th grade campus, but also at the younger grades too, start to take that continuum and use it in their classroom with kids. Where do you feel like you are on the continuum right now? How does your behavior right now, what is it showing us about where you're at in the continuum? And what do you need in order to help you to re-engage in the work that we're doing? We do have MTSS plans that we do for behavior, and there's quarterly reviews of those as well. And then meetings with deans of students. So at the 2nd through 4th grade campus, those are a little more formal check-ins with the dean of students and counselor. At the pre-K K1 campus is a little more informal. Okay, so lots of things that we're doing in order to address various behaviors on the campus. Attendance, you've probably seen some of these attendance numbers lately, but this is the different years. We've seen some pretty significant increases from these years, about a percentage point a year. This is our year-to-date number right now. So the strategies that we've been utilizing have been beneficial, which I'm so thankful for. And obviously we've seen the growth too in the district numbers. So we do put students on probation for attendance whenever we have some really significant attendance concerns, and they're over the number of absences allowed for the year. So right now, in Q1, we had 2 students on probation for attendance at elementary. Now we've got 4 additional students on probation for attendance. But what we are seeing is some really good trends with attendance. And some of the things that we've been doing with this, we've been sharing with you all along the way, are the incentives that we've been trying to do for kiddos. They think that this is way fun, especially jumping for George, which is money.
Yes.
We let them jump for money. We give away, we have awards, and then we've been giving away bikes, which is a lot of fun too. But we've also been we've got some pretty structured meetings that are happening. I meet with our deans of students every 2 weeks. And we have a pretty structured plan where if a student hits a certain number, which is pretty small, so that we can keep track of it, there's emails, phone calls, to parents. We've had some truancy prevention meetings, and this is all laid out in a plan that we have for attendance. And then we also do watch list letters at the end of each quarter. We have been putting families on probationary attendance. And if they violate the probationary attendance, then the next step in a following semester would be an unenrollment. So parents, I think, are understanding the significance of this, especially when we talk about how much attendance affects a child's academics, behavior, enter any word here, because it affects everything if they're not in this. We have also had some intervention by parent liaison. I've done home visits with our parent liaison on multiple occasions too, and we just can't even get a hold of them. And then we include attendance in our MTSS discussions also quarterly. Okay. All right. One of the last pieces is our teacher staff retention. So you can see our numbers from 21, 22, 23 to now. This is with our all staff, and this is with teaching staff. So there are some differences here where we see some differences in retention and whatnot. So where we're at right now with teaching staff, 74% returning, 90% of staff returning. And again, the teachers are included in this all staff number. I do think that this year may be one of our better years as far as teaching staff, and so I'm encouraged by the possibility. So some of the things that we're doing to address teacher retention, TIA, and teacher incentive allotment, which we'll find out in February if we've got anything. A lot of coaching and mentoring that happens for new teachers and our existing teachers. We are having that school board committee that Mr. Nason is holding next week to look at teacher retention, which I think will be helpful. Trainings for teachers and staff. The PDC overhaul that Tyler is going to be working on especially is going to continue to press into teachers on a level of what they need individually.
That's one of those 6 initiatives that's in that strategic plan.
That's one of the ones we've been working on with TSL. So a couple of other noteworthy items, the strong foundations planning, that's the curriculum planning that we've been doing this year so far, and then looking for the strong foundations implementation for that English language arts curriculum. Obviously, the student engagement work that I've been talking about is not only on the behavior side, but obviously heavily on the academic side. Year 1 is underway. We've already got year 2 and 3 planned. At least the plan is in the works. And then, like I said, the PDC planning for the 25-26 school year will give that tailored training for teachers and staff. And then I've started something new this year, which is an elementary leadership team meeting. So I have my A team, which is my team of deans of students, 2 deans of students and dean of academics. But something Tyler has done in the previous years that I started this year was an elementary leadership team meeting that I do monthly. And that allows a larger committee of leadership, instructional coaches, our counselor, our director of special populations to get together and really focus on all of these things: behavior, attendance, academics, and all of that. Any questions?
Just for the teacher retention piece.
Yeah.
When do like your contracts go out?
Right before spring break.
Okay.
So we do contract as at-home employers. We do letters of intent.
Right.
Okay. We do letters of intent, which come out.
Okay, so that's when you'll kind of have a better picture then
Could be
about
like-
yeah.
retention for next year.
Yeah, a little bit after spring break, we asked that they turn them in, and so then we generally have an idea. And there's already some that I know.
Right.
That being said, Tyler and Jennifer have done a very intentional job of talking to teachers
Yeah.
who may not be their choice not to return, and also making sure that that conversation is open. So I doubt that there's very many that will be a surprise, usually, at this point. I mean, I would think Tyler either. There's always 1 or 2 that surprise you, but,
Mhm.
but there's been lots of open, honest conversations.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just wanted to say, great work on what all you've been doing, and I think it's shown from last year to this year. It's been a big improvement, and you definitely put in the work for it. So
Wonder why
Well
everyone's
done.
tired of us.
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, no, it's great work. So just thank you for sharing all that. Yeah. Oh, okay, good.
Take 30 seconds to stand up and stretch your legs. Talk to somebody near you.
Stand up, stretch your legs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ooh. If I can even get out. Yeah. No.
Closure, I'm gonna sleep at 5:30.
Okay, you got about 15 seconds of stretching.
I'll be less.
Oh, but you, not because you had to go till 5:30.
Oh,
My mom's going out of town and my son's. So we went to IHOP, it was cold.
All right, that was 30 seconds. If you would like to stand while I do this.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. I was told 10 minutes and I put together a good 45 minutes worth of material, so we'll see how I go. So where have we been? We've talked a lot about goals. Some of this is, will be quicker because Jennifer's already addressed it, but on your brochure, we have the five student outcomes that we want to see. And Jennifer talked about the first two. I'm going to talk about the last three. The first one is my high school goal. It has to do with college, career, military readiness. All of these, as Jennifer already expressed and Stephanie talked about as well, are 5-year goals. So the goal is in June of 2029. We also have 2 middle school goals, one for 8th grade reading, language arts, and one for 8th grade math. These are STAR related goals, and they are at the MEETS grade level and above. So just reiterating what we talked about in the last little bit. So we're looking on college, career, military readiness. We already started at a pretty high level. Our high school's been achieving really well there. That's what we've done with great skill for many years. So growing from 80% to 95% by 2029. In reading language arts for 8th graders specifically, we're looking at going from 69% to 79% meeting grade level or higher. And then for math on STAR in 8th grade, we're looking at 28% to 53%. Okay. This is going to be a little confusing on some of the data I have. When we get state scores, our 8th graders who participate in Algebra 1 are included with our 8th graders who participate in 8th grade math. We get 1 middle school math score. However, our goal is for the middle school math class. Our 8th graders in Algebra 1 tend to perform really, really well on the STAR test. There are more advanced math students, and those numbers are in there, but what we're focusing on is how are we preparing our students in 8th grade math specifically. So when we look at some of the achievement, how we've achieved on STAR, it actually is going to look higher than what we see here because our 8th grade numbers our Algebra 1 numbers get folded in there. Now, only Algebra 1 for 8th graders, not Algebra 1 for 9th graders or 10th graders or other grade levels. Okay, so bear with me on that. I don't have that data teased out. You saw this chart earlier. This is how we took those 5-year goals and broke them into single-year goals. We're focusing on these 3 that I already talked about, and we're looking at year 1. Okay, so we set baseline goals, baseline scores based on 2023 STAR data. Then we had 2024 STAR data, which I'll show you in just a minute. Our goal is for 2025, this year's STAR data. So we're actually going to see some backwards looking things. We have some scores last year that are lower than our baseline. That's not what we wanted to see. It also means that we have a larger gap to fill from in this year's scores to get to this first year target. It was a smaller gap based on 2023, and unfortunately we saw some dips in our data last school year on STAR in these areas. So another thing that I'll highlight for you is I'm going to give you achievement scores for all middle school or all high school. So our goal for all middle school reading is 50%. But our House bill goal that's in your chart is for 8th grade only. Okay, I know I've got you at the end and I'm throwing you out confusing numbers. But overall at our middle school, we're hoping to see 50% of our students in reading, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th at MEETS or above. That is below 71, which is the goal for 8th grade, but that's because 8th grade has historically performed higher on reading language arts than some of our other grade levels. We find at Rapoport that our trajectory is that the further through the grade levels the students go, the higher their achievement is. Okay, Our fifth graders on our middle school campus tend to score lowest in reading of all of our middle school grade levels. Our eighth graders tend to score highest. So this is an average goal. We set it based on how we achieved last year. Okay, so these are our goals. That's what I want you to know. This is where we're setting the target for this school year, and reading, math, science, and social studies at the meets grade level for middle school. You can see they're a bit higher at high school, 80% for our reading. And that's because, as I said, our trajectory increases. At high school for English 1 and English 2, the only two grade levels that we take assessments in high school for reading is English 1 and English 2, mostly 9th and 10th graders. They perform much higher, so our goal is 80% based on our previous achievement. Math is even higher. Our Algebra 1 students tend to perform better, so we've had to have a higher goal at the high school. Something that's also different between Jennifer's and my data is I'm going to go through middle school and high school all at one time. There are two separate campuses with TEA that's served by one administrative team. Okay, our CCMR goal for this year is 85% of high school. Do you have questions about the goals that I've thrown at you yet? Yes, Grady.
No.
Okay.
No.
It's just a lot of numbers on
That
one
is,
page.
yeah.
So let me show you where we were on STAR. So this is last year's STAR, 2024 STAR. We were at 43% in reading for middle school, 22% in math, 19% science, 17% social studies. So you can see our goals are aligned to how we scored last year. This is where we were with high school, 74%. So all of these are a stretch for us to get. We want to continue moving the bar up every year. And some of those are bigger gaps than others. In 8th grade last year, we were at 57% in reading, 19% in math. This is what I was talking about earlier. If we went back a page and looked at that long term and we looked at the baseline scores, the baseline is even higher than we scored in both these areas, because in 2023, our 8th graders did better in reading and math than last year in 2024. TA has us comparing apples and oranges all the time, but we're looking at 8th grade, but our 8th graders change. Our 8th grade teachers change, but we're comparing data from year after year after year. So we just have to keep that in mind. Now, so that's where we've been, our goal setting. Where are we now? So how are we achieving? I have some quarterly data. So quarterlies we give quarterly. And these are designed by instructional coaches. They are STAR released questions, so they match the rigor of STAR, but they are only 1/4 of the content at a time. Jennifer talked about benchmarks on her slides, and that's a whole year's data. When we're doing quarterly data, we're actually only looking at what students learned that quarter. It's only assessing over the things they've learned, not stuff they haven't gotten to yet. Sometimes that does mean that the scores are a little bit inflated. All of these are exceeding our goal, which is incredible. Almost all of these, excuse me. Our U.S. history is just a tiny bit lower than the end of year goal, but the rest are achieving that. I want to give you some caution, as I'm giving myself, that our quarterlies don't always exactly correlate to how we do on STAR, because on STAR, the student is having to apply skills they've learned all year, where they get to take the first quarter over just the first quarter's learning. Then the second quarter only over what they've just learned in that last quarter, rather than it being cumulative across the year. So we're encouraged by this data. It is trending with how we saw these same grade levels perform last year. So in most cases, quarter 1 data in 5th grade reading looks very similar to what quarter 1 data in 5th grade reading looked like last year. So that helps us feel like we're making similar progress. But what we're going to do next, I'm going to tell you about this first. In a minute, I'll tell you what we're doing next. And it's actually getting some benchmark data. We will do benchmarks in February, and that will give us, benchmark has been very correlated to STAR. It's very predictive of how students will perform. And so at some point, I'll be able to provide to you and definitely to my team our data, and it tracks a lot closer with how we expect to perform in STAR and how close we are to meeting these goals that we've set for this school year. Okay, so how have we been doing this? Well, we have a lot of strategies. We have some system strategies. Let me move this for just a second. Some system strategies that we have is we're doing accelerated math courses in 6th and 7th grade, and then we've been doing Algebra 1 and 8th grade for many years. The Texas Education Agency had us add a 6th grade course this year for accelerated math. So our more advanced learners who need to be achieving at meets and master's grade level are getting more challenged more early on and getting to advance in that earlier, learning those skills faster. And so we hope that that will also translate to higher rates at the meets and master's level. We've adapted our fifth grade bell schedule. Fifth grade, I told you, is scoring at the lowest level on pretty much all of our STAR subjects. They take math, reading, and science in fifth grade. Science for the first time, they get to take a science STAR test. And we have found that they need more time in class. So we reduced from a 7-period day to a 6-period day this year, and we've extended the learning time in their classrooms. They're getting between 10 and 15 minutes more per day per subject across a 167 school day year. So we're getting a lot more learning in fifth grade classrooms in reading and math, and science and social studies. We've been doing these lab classes in math and reading. We've done that for several years, and it's pull out time for students to get extended learning. And we're also doing accelerated instruction tutoring after school for students who are kind of at that did not meet level. A 10-minute timer. Some other strategies for data for our data response. So we are responding to data frequently. Multi-tier system of support meetings that we have quarterly, where we're looking at students of concern based on academic grades, based on attendance, based on behavior data, based on their social emotional needs, meeting with teaching teams and discussing that. I have monthly secondary leadership team meetings. And in that, we're actually looking at real data. We have one tomorrow in the conference room right here. 15 of us will get together and we're analyzing each of these teams' progress towards a goal that they've set this year. Athletics has goals about eligibility. Our behavior team has goals about behavior and attendance. Our academic team is really targeting math focuses. We've started this strategy of doing checks for understanding so that we are capturing data about math understanding and reading understanding after every unit of study. So they're getting high level, consistent data rather than waiting until the end of the quarter. When the quarter's over, we're getting this so we can spiral in material throughout the learning time. And then we've employed a math interventionist this year. We went ahead and let go of a staff member position to make sure we could maintain a math interventionist because we know math is an area that we've been struggling. And so this math interventionist pushes into math classes in full small group. She helps run some of these lab classes that I talked about on the last slide. And so we have a lot of intensive support for students struggling in math. And then we have some strategies for our CCMR goal, which has been really improving quite a bit. And I think I skipped over that on the last slide, but we were at about 90% last year, a little over 90% on CCMR. So we're on track towards getting towards our goal. We have a new initiative that we're piloting this year called Future Achievement Starts Today, FAST, and it's some individual student goal setting where they're talking about their plans for after college or after high school. And we're doing that with some of our most at-need students who are at risk for potential dropout status. We have 4 that we're piloting this year, and they're going through a process of monthly meetings one-on-one with a staff member to do some mentorship and actually making their goals tangible and achievable. So we're really excited to see that come to be and help those kids meet their college career readiness. And then we're increasing our number of opportunities for students to take the TSIA, which is the entrance exam for college, Texas colleges. So where are we going? We're going to do some benchmarks coming up in February. So essentially, you'll see question marks here. And I hope to be able to provide much more predictive data. That benchmark will be a full release STAR, and we'll be able to know how much of the information students have learned towards the end of the year in their reading class for all the grade levels. Hopefully, we see these are also meeting this goal, but some of them won't be, and it'll help us be responsive to the kind of TEAC level data. What are they not learning and mastering in the classroom? What are some future strategies that it works? Bring benchmarks. We're going to be utilizing our interventionists as well as our instructional staff, instructional coaching staff, and special education staff to make sure that we're working on kind of small group and individual levels based on the data that we're receiving. We kind of up that quite a bit in the spring as we get closer to the STAR testing time. Spring benchmarks tells us a lot of information about what students know and what they don't know that we need to come back and reteach. And then we're going to continue to implement all of those monthly and quarterly data conversations that we're having where we're looking at how much we're achieving goals, not just at the end of the year, but all the way through the year. I have several other data points. This is Jennifer's fault because I saw her slide presentation and all the other data she gave. So let me just let you look at it for a second and see attendance data over a several year period. We have been trending upward on attendance since COVID. really, up until these years. I highlight the COVID year of 2019, 2020 that is incredibly high attendance, but it's not because anybody came to school here because we didn't. What we did is you had to just click on a thing on the computer once, and we were like, yep, you were here. Yep, you read that email. Yep, I talked to you on the phone. Yep, you responded to my text message. Check. So we were at 98%, almost 99% that year.
Awesome.
But we have been trending back towards those targets right now as of Friday of last week. We're below the goal that we have set this year for attendance for both middle and high school, but we're in line with about where we were last year at the end of the year. So we hope to see this spring continue to bring that up. High school is one we're working really hard on. We had a low attendance day today. So you skip bad weather. Yeah, we're canceling all that.
No, it got cold. It got cold, so people.
Oh, yeah, cold.
And I know
People don't come when it's cold.
that has happened. Funny you say that at our campus, and I say our.
Yeah.
But there was a day when Roman was like, I think we had 2 people in class today. And I was like, really?
It got cold.
The late start was 71%. Today was just cold. It was a regular day, but it was just cold. Maybe getting 80-something%.
Behavior data, let me just show you a few highlights. 7th grade, we got some stuff happening. So we're watching it closely. This is based on Skyward referrals, 137 total referrals at the different levels, 1, 2, and 3. Our highest level of referrals happen at level 1. And I just highlighted some of the things that really are the ones that are the most frequent. Forced play and rough play, 55 referrals across middle school. We know that middle school students do that and they get in trouble for it, and we're working on building their ability to play nice. We have a high rate of harassment. Harassment is an act that's meant to torment, annoy, or bother someone. And we're not talking about harassment at a legal level where I need to involve law enforcement. That happens at a much higher level, level 3 and level 4. These are things where I'm trying to bother somebody and I'm just going, I'm annoying them on purpose just to make them annoyed. And so that happens, and we address that with them. But I just wanted to highlight some of the areas that we have the highest rates of issues. Most of our violations are happening at level 1, things that are happening in the classroom and addressed by the teacher.
By the 7th graders.
And a lot of them are happening.
That's
by our
graders.
second graders. I will say there's also some grade levels that don't have a lot of reporting, and that also has to do with the level of teacher tolerance across the team that doesn't make it to a referral. So there is some skew based on teacher team personality. High school, you can see a much lower rate of referrals. Middle schoolers show us all the thoughts that they had out loud and in person. So we get to record those regularly. High school children learn how to hide those things a little bit better from us. But we actually have our highest rate at level 2. But that's because level 2 involves cell phones, Brady. It involves truancy, which means I was late to class. It's rarely skipping, but sometimes it is. It's mostly I was not where I was supposed to be on time. But we also have a high rate of defiance, noncompliance, even at high school, at 25. So our highest numbers are 9th grade across the board, our most middle school, high schoolers. And we have a high rate of level 2s happening in our 10th grade team. A lot of those happen in this cell phone category. So dress code is also another level 2 that takes up this number. So this is all as of the end of the fall semester. I can happily report to you that we are performing better. In some places, very closely aligned to last year, but nothing is higher at the mid-year point than it was at the midpoint last year. In fact, middle school is significantly lower in some of these areas. High school, the level 2 and level 3 rates are really, really low.
And I would say when we looked, so as an improvement committee, we actually looked at this data, and one of the things we noticed is as we implemented tracking, it went right, because we were just now starting to put things together and actually record them in the system. And then once that was established, you saw pretty dramatic adjustments as we went through that. Whenever we said, oh, here's our data, what are we going to do with that? So it was an interesting conversation as we looked at that to see how it was like, oh, we're tracking it. Oh, we're tracking it. Oh, now we're doing stuff. And just to watch it really tick down.
Speaking of that, we are tracking for the first time eligibility rates on a global level as a campus through our athletic department. We've been tracking eligibility because that's what so we're making sure that we have eligible students participating in UIL, but tracking the percentages in season versus off season, looking at fall sports, winter sports. We'll look at spring sports. Winter sports have kicked up into gear, so we'll have that data hopefully at our next meeting. But my next meeting, that we'll discuss some of this. But it was interesting for us to see that our in-season eligibility rate versus our out of season or total includes off-season students. Students are very motivated, naturally so, to be eligible when the team is playing. But when I'm off season, I might not be as motivated. And so trying to figure out how we tap into that motivation all year long, because my academics matters whether I'm on the basketball court or not, or on the volleyball. In this case.
With the soccer pitch now.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So just wanted to make sure that you knew that this data is out there and we're tracking it. And this is our teacher retention data. Jennifer showed this. Staff and teachers across the secondary campus. All staff does include teachers in that data. But we've really had a pretty solid rate across this. Last year was our strongest year we've had in a long, long time. I hope that we continue to trend that way. We see, just as Jennifer does, that teacher rates are a bit lower than all staff rates. All staff, we are admin team, which tends to stay fairly constant, our instructional coaching team, which we don't tend to see as much turnover, our teaching assistant teams, all those non-instructional spaces. What questions do you have for me?
I just want to say that, I mean, I
Yeah.
think those retention numbers are really
Yeah.
strong, and it's a credit to
Mhm.
y'all's leadership.
Mhm.
Really.
So what is the plan responsive once you get those benchmark numbers? You know, you realize, okay, they are down here, you know, not just staying the course of how we're gonna do.
I think one thing, Ray, that we try to do, one of the answers to that question and more of a things that we've learned forever, we have gotten that benchmark, that data in February, and we have a month and a half, less than a month to respond and do really intensive boot camp style. We've rearranged schedules. We leverage staff to come do some stopping some elective opportunities and pushing in for intensive instruction about whatever they're not learning. And what we're trying to do this year with those checks for understanding is catch it all year long. So that we're not saying, okay, we're going to shove it all in a month, because we don't. We don't course correct in a month's worth of time. What we need to do is spiral that in all year long, making sure, and we do that at the end of each quarter, but now doing it at the end of units and being able to say at the end of this unit with my instructional coach's support, we can go back in and say, I need to reteach this concept through this strategy on this day in my lesson planning. So we've been doing a lot more of that. We will mobilize our team after benchmark data comes in and say, okay, these are the high priority skills that students are still struggling in. These are the ones that are really close, but we're not meeting the mark, and trying to triage some of the instruction and reteaching in class through that. We'll definitely mobilize our lab classes for the last
How are high school and middle school students reactive or responsive to getting that additional instruction? Receptive?
It varies,
Yeah.
and I think it mostly is contingent on the teacher that's providing that instruction. That's why we talk about teacher retention all the time, because really incredible teachers who are highly relational, who connect with students and who show that love and care for them that students need to see, they can get students to do anything. And that's why we need to hire the best and keep the best. Those teachers make a difference even in a short period of time, and students respond.
Yeah.
So sometimes we see that success and sometimes we don't. Something that I envision that we will step into next year is a lot of work about student level goal setting. I think that's a gap for us as a school right now, is that students know this is where I want to be this year. So that when we have these moments, we can say, well, how are you tracking with your goal? Because we're not doing that very well right now. I found this year that my team having their goal and having monthly meetings where I'm saying, okay, show your progress towards your goal, is we're making a big difference by having accountability and having frequent conversations. We're motivated when we watch the needle move or not. And we need to be leveraging that with our students. Trying to figure out how to do that with 500 people. That's the thing we're going to do next, is figure out how to get students to set realistic goals and mobilize that across our campus.
And on that same line, coming from MacArthur over to the campus for fifth grade, how do our fifth grade find that adjustment and kind of settling into this environment And is that when they need to start setting those goals and say, well, in middle school, I want to be able to take another language or do this, and by the time I get to high school, how does it work for them?
Yeah, I think that that is a transition point. We try really hard because of how they're contained within their own building, for it still to have some elementary aspects, but they start to have a much fuller schedule. They're changing classes a lot more. So we do some transition points this year that we'll do with parents and students, so they get a little taste of what they're headed into. But our fifth grade teachers also do a lot to come across and check and meet those students, talk with the fourth grade teachers. We did a lot of transitional work with our teaching team last year, so that they know from teachers and from students and from observations over at MacArthur what their students are going to need when they come over. So we'll do some of that this spring.
My son thinks he's basically coming to high school.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's right.
My kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like, in
Big
his
kid,
mind,
yeah.
high school is,
Yeah,
It's
well,
just
that's
not how
exciting.
you're from 5 to 12.
Yeah.
And we want to leverage some of that. And that, I will say right now, that's not something we're doing really well on the individual goal setting and tracking at the student level. It's something I already have a vision for
I
what
was
that
gonna
can
say,
look like.
you will, because my fifth grade is coming.
That's right. We're
Like,
going to be ready for you.
He's Mr. Curiosity right now.
But the great thing is like Tyler and his team have been able to kind of continuously tweak. And so I would say even this year's fifth graders have moved up, adjusted better and faster than last year, and years before, because we're still making those tweaks to see, like, there was some class schedule changes that made a big difference in how kids moved about the building. And so just those little adjustments as they go, how they engage with the students, how they work with them on social emotional development in fifth grade and all of that. Because fifth grade starts the weird monster stage, right? Where puberty hits and, developmental and all that stuff happens. 5, 6, 7, 8, then they become human again in 9. So that's one of the things they're like.
Sort of.
Human-ish, but
Resembling.
it starts that early. So anyway, but that's what his middle school team is really set for.
And the board's willingness to help us restructure our administrative team this year to have a dean of students at middle school and a dean of students in high school has made a significant difference in our tailoring the needs of our students at those younger grades. Okay, I think I finished in 10 minutes if it wasn't for those questions.
Yeah.
To say, I wish I could capture this, piece that they just did, because we need good examples. I just said, we need a monitoring report. I didn't give her any parameters. You went through what was in my mind though, not just the academic piece though, but you added on the attendance and the behavior, and then to hear the board members, Brady, Rachel, thank you for your question. We have got to get board members asking better questions, not, well, I think y'all should be doing X, Y, Z. No, that's get out and get back in your lane. But they asked questions and then you responded, and Tyler, you were really vulnerable to say, we've got to get better at this. You're talking about the individual student role setting. Yeah, we got to work on that, but he has a thoughtful response to here's what's coming next. So I want to give y'all a kudo publicly. So thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to steal your lane.
It is recorded.
You're good.
It's recorded.
I'm trying to bring us up to close tonight. I'm gonna get us there here pretty quick. I was checking the clock. We're a little just past 8 o'clock, so I won't keep it very long. I'm gonna tie in a lot of what's already been said tonight. Last closing slide here. I can promise you there won't be a lot of numbers for that. I think there's like 2 slides that have a few numbers. Truth be told, I've been in school a long time, but I never took college algebra. So we're gonna stay on some of the deep numbers tonight. So I do get to talk to you about Rapoport's unique opportunity grant opportunity from the Texas Education Agency. They came on board with us last year in Region 12. They were one of 4 districts who participated in the strategic planning and performance management project built around the effective district framework, which we'll talk about a little bit. And only one of 33 districts in the entire state out of the 1,200 districts that are there. So pretty unique initiative that they got to journey with us through last year in the planning year. I'm going to talk to you more about tonight about year 2 in the performance management year. I got the opportunity to come out last April, my colleague and I, Dr. Middleton, and we talked a little bit about year 1. But just to recap, in year 1 of last year, in that performance management year, we did a lot of work. We did a lot of work in the fall, collectively working with your staff about analyzing the current state of the district. We gathered information, everything from academic, the classroom activities, to the assignments that were taking place in class. We spent the entire fall assessing that. We broke down the data. We did an academic review. We did classroom observations and walkthroughs. We came back in December and we revealed that data to the steering committee. And then we came back after the Christmas break and we started building that plan that Dr. Newman was just holding up and that you've referenced a couple different times tonight. And we started building that 3 to 5 year long-range strategic plan. And that's what took place last year. We engaged stakeholders. We did focus groups with community members, with parents. We brought in students. We brought in teachers to really get that voice. And we presented more on that last year. So that was the strategic planning year. This year, this is the performance management year, where we work with the management team, which are members of last year's steering committee and maybe a few others. And we begin in year 2 as a TSL team from the service center to train your team on how to manage all of those different initiatives for the next 3 to 5 years, so that you don't create a plan, you put it in a 3-ring binder and it goes on a shelf, or you have a pretty brochure and it says, well, this is what we have, but are we living that plan? Are we managing it? Are we seeing it come to fruition for those systems that we've created? So that's what we've started doing this year. We've started working with one particular plan so we can learn how to manage it well. So that at some point we step back as a service center and as a district, you sustain the rest of those initiatives and carry out the entirety of the plan. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. They've been talking about some of those initiatives tonight. I'll step back and show you just briefly. This is what you have kind of in your document there. This is what we started with as a rough draft. This is called our strategy on the page. We started with the vision and the core values and the mission statements of Rapoport. You've talked about those tonight, those every Raven, every day statements, those envision student experiences. We built that with your team last spring. We've talked about those outcome goals tonight with your 2 campus administrators. We grounded those in the House Bill 3 goals, which are in statute that you have to have. And then we added the 8th grade goal in there with it, the 8th grade goals to make it more holistic to address every campus here in Rapoport. And once we said, this is what we want our students to experience every day as they're in the classroom or on the court or on the field or in the community of Rapoport, we want to strive toward meeting these academic goals as well. How are we going to achieve that? So we did that bottom-up thinking. We focused on 2 primary areas, the area of talent that came through the landscape analysis and the feedback that we gathered, and instructional capacity building. We knew that those were going to be our 2 big areas of focus. And in order to move forward, getting better in those areas and achieving those outcome goals, to provide those experiences for the students, we then started building out different initiatives. We're going to work on getting better at streamlining onboarding. We're going to get better in recruitment. We're going to get better in retention. That's in our talent focus area. And then for instructional capacity building, Jennifer talked about earlier about aligning the engagement in the classroom, the professional development model, and then also the strong foundations for RLA that we've talked about tonight too. So in this year, we're honing in on one particular goal to get good at first. Can I brag that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gee, look at there. All right. We are working them with specifically on aligned expectations for engaged classroom. Every initiative that we just showed you has a specific initiative owner that's helping us drive that work. Jennifer is actually our initiative owner on this initiative that we're working on this year and monitoring closely. So in year 2, in that initiative, we've started building out metrics. How do we know that we're making improvements on that initiative, right? So we built a set of input metrics. We built a set of output metrics. We built a set of leading student outcome metrics in an effort to reach those student outcome goals. Back to that strategy on the page. So let's talk about what these are real quick. Okay, and I'll try not to just read to you, but a core of it is here on this slide. So I want to take the time to do that. Our input metrics are the appropriate resources, and here's the key word, capacity building needed or provided to build knowledge, mindset, skills for those implementing the initiatives. They usually occur at the most beginning of the implementation cycle or as part of the ongoing improvements. So what you need to start it off with. Okay, those are our input metrics. Our output metrics have to do with fidelity of implementation. What is taking place, as well as the result of the implementation of the inputs. They usually occur during the implementation cycle and can be repeatable to see implementation improvements over time. From seeing that, we have leading student outcome metrics. This is the demonstration of what students know and can do as a result of inputs and outputs. Okay, and they happen before our lagging outcome goals. In other words, at this point, it's too late to change anything. It's the end result. It's the end of the game. It's the final score on the scoreboard. Okay, so the way I relate to this, because I'm a simple-minded guy, I'm a keep it simple, stupid kind of guy. I think about output metrics and leading outcome metrics. I was driving over here and I'm thinking it's cold outside. When it gets cold at home, I like to cook a pot of what? A pot of chili when it gets cold. Everybody goes to the store. You can't get chili mix, right? So that's kind of what this process of performance management is. First of all, this year, when we're working on the aligned expectations, Jennifer talked about the training they're doing. That has to do with those input metrics, the ingredients for the chili. I gotta have all the ingredients. I gotta have all the inputs. So I'm gonna have a good product. And then you start the pot, you dump it in, it's cooking on the stove. You cook a pot, it looks like chili. I'm observing it at this point, it looks like something that could be edible. That's part of the output metrics. We're doing classroom walkthroughs to see if the ingredients that we're putting in on the front end, on the professional development, are starting to look like what they're supposed to be. Then after about 30 minutes, that chili's simmering, I'm getting hungry and it's smelling, I lift it up and I taste it. Ooh, I didn't put enough salt in there, or I didn't put enough garlic, so I'm gonna add to it. Change it up a little bit before it's too late, before I take it to the dinner table. My wife looks at me crazy, right? I've got time to make changes and adjustments. That's what we're doing at those checkpoints, those leading outcome metrics. And then at the end, I bring it to the table, we eat dinner that night, and that's the final outcome. That's where we can determine if we've got the best end result. So that's what this process is that we're doing. We've had an opportunity to look at inputs and outputs this year. We're going to talk about that journey. So we started in June. We started with performance management. We took the group to San Antonio this summer for summer trainings. We didn't have a baseline with BOI assessments. We used last year's STAR data kind of as that baseline. And we started doing those classroom walkthroughs back in September. Then we had a step back meeting to look at that input data. What about those inputs were working or not working or come to fruition, that fidelity of implementation? Then we have an opportunity for improvements to happen. And then we had our second walkthrough in November. And then we came back right before Christmas break and we had an improvement review where we stepped back and looked at the data from the walkthroughs at those outcome metrics. We're going to share some of those with you in just a second. So let's look at those fall inputs. Here are the metrics that we set up on the front end. We wanted to know, or we wanted to make sure we implemented that all teachers, support staff, and instructional leaders complete August engagement training. All on that, improving classrooms engagement. It was a series of PD. What book was it around again?
Reimagining student engagement.
The Reimagining Student Engagement. So they're very intentional on this initiative. That was our first metric. And so as we measured this in the first step back meeting that we had, campuses with 100% training completed, we had 50%. What are factors in there? I don't know. Maybe teachers were absent that day. Maybe they didn't meet the training or whatever. But on the first check, we had 50% of the campuses were completely trained. 94% of the staff were trained. And of that, if we break it down further, 94% of that were actually teachers, 95% support staff, and 94% of our instructional leaders trained on the first step back of that input data. On our second metric, all elementary teachers, support staff, and instructional leaders complete RBEAS training. What is RBEAS? It's that acronym of research-based instructional strategies having to do with making sure that we are teaching with the best high-quality instructional material that we can. The best science behind teaching reading and math from the education agency. When we checked that at the first time, campuses with 100% training completed, we didn't have any campus at 100% at that time, but we did have 90%, 96% of the staff trained, 94% of the teachers, and 100% of the support staff, and 100% of the instructional. So some of that context gleans a little bit better through the larger number of the data, if that makes sense. And then the third metric we had as our fall input metric when we went in, and did our classroom walkthroughs we'll look at, on the next output metric, was that all teachers, support staff, and instructional leaders complete November engagement training. At that time, we did not have everybody at 100% at every campus, but we did have 92% of the staff trained, 93% of the teachers, 90% of support staff trained, and 94% of instructional leaders trained. Now, just because we didn't hit those numbers on the first glance, remember we had that improvement action time. So when we go back and look at it again, hopefully we improve those numbers. Once we have the ingredients in and we're start checking it for the first time during those output metrics, we're trying to see what is the result of that or the fidelity of implementation when we do those rounds of walkthroughs. So we had a few different metrics for the output observations. Metric 1, classrooms are utilizing the adopted curriculum for Tier 1 instruction. So we set a baseline in that first September walkthrough, we saw 73.3%. So in that meeting, we set a target. And then in the second walkthrough on November 18th, we determined where we were based on that baseline and the goal that we set in the first step back meeting. So when we came back in November, we had met our target. We were at 86.7% of teachers utilizing adopted materials for Tier 1 instruction. Our second metric, teachers asking questions that encourage all students to engage complex higher order thinking. In September, there was a baseline of 67%. We set a goal for 75. We didn't quite reach it. We actually declined a little bit. We were closer to 53%. Metric 3, teachers monitor the quality of student participation. We saw a baseline of 40, we set a goal of 55, and they shattered it at 87%. Metric 4, teachers recognize when students become confused or disengaged in response to student learning or social emotional needs. At a baseline of 47, set a goal of 55, hit it at 87. Metric 5, teachers adjust instruction activities to maintain student engagement, which is the core of what we're doing in this. 53% was the baseline, 65 was the target, and they did achieve it, hit it at 67. Metric 6, teachers monitor student behavior and responses for engagement and understanding at a baseline of 53, 65, and really shattered that one at almost 94%. And metric 7, classrooms provide students with the opportunity to productively engage in activities like reading, writing, and practicing. In other words, they are engaged in their learning, right? It's not just all one direction, teacher driven. We set a baseline of 60 in September with a goal of 70 and shattered it at 93.3%. So this is a very intentional initiative with some very intentional metrics that we were able to track. And we're able to see where we're making progress so we can readjust and then give greater focus as well. So what lies ahead in the spring milestones? So we're still making more improvement actions. And Jennifer talked about another training on the horizon. It's training number 4 in that series for this year. I'm actually coming back out Thursday with my colleagues. We're doing another round of, I think, 16 classroom observations that day, 4 on each campus. We'll bring back that data. We'll have another step back meeting in March to look at our input and output metrics once again. We'll chew on that. We'll make corrections within the faculty and staff for improvement times. We'll have another walkthrough at the end of April. We'll have our end of year assessments and do our final improvement review in May. And so all of that, even though it's a strict focus on one initiative right now, the other initiative owners are working in the background on their initiatives as well. And they are a part of this process. So as their initiative, being the initiative owner, they know how to mirror their process over the next 3 to 5 years with their work too. So here is just a glimpse at the rest of the initiatives that were from that strategy on the page over a 5-year span. I know that my colleague, our performance management and data specialist, and our TSO coordinator, Dr. Allison Middleton, is getting ready to work with Dr. Ellis on the next initiative that we're focusing on, which is professional development model, P2C, which will be the one I think over the next major focus in the work. So we're excited about continuing to work with Rapoport. Like I said, they were only 1 of 33 in the state last year. We actually were able to add 4 more to the district this year. They've kind of been a model for some of the work that we're doing with other districts. We have a really good team here. A very collaborative district leadership. When we get in a room, we have meetings, we have very intense sometimes, very heart to heart, but very meaningful conversations driven towards student outcomes. And we've been excited to get to work with Rapoport. I think a lot of that has come out in the administrative reports tonight and the other conversations that we had about the good things that are happening. So I think before I turn it over to Stephanie, are there any questions? Just kind of want to give you that report on how the work from year one hasn't sat on the shelf and how we're really working to see it through in year two.
That same program is the one that Mark has been the executive coach. It's part of that same program. So as there's initiative leads walking through, and as we're walking through as committees, then on the side, Mark and I also meet and walk through kind of leadership, accountability, special conversations, like checkpoints
There's an
we go along the
executive
way.
coach.
Yeah.
As a former superintendent, I get to work with superintendents in that
Yeah.
role as well.
But we do a lot of like barometer checking and, you know,
Absolutely.
that sort of stuff as we've gone along the way. So it's been really cool to have like multi-levels of support as we've been moving towards this really performance management type activity, as opposed to just reporting out. It's really managing dates and deadlines and structures and walkthroughs and step backs and really personal accountability pieces to that. So it's been a great process. We're excited to hear what year 3 looks like.
We are too.
Yeah. DA
Thank you,
hasn't
guys.
said there's a year 3.
So he landed the plane, but I can't leave without a wrap up. So something new you learned this evening, an action you'll take or a question that you have. Everybody doesn't have to respond to all. Well, what are your thoughts? Something new. Anybody want to go first?
One is this, I love being a support to our staff. And so just kind of hearing the things that they would like to see happen and trying to be engaged and be more supportive. I think that's the thing that I want to take away is that, you know, I have great pride and talk about Rapoport, but perhaps there's something I could lean into even with our campus here coming into the new campus and be more supportive. So I'll take that action. I want to be supportive for fifth graders setting goals.
I hear step up day activity.
Next, thank you, Rachel. That's a great example. Who wants to go next? Something you learned, an action you'll take, or a question you have.
I think for me, something I learned was just, you know, seeing a lot of what has been talked about put into place, but also seeing the results of that in just 1 year. And so that was really impressive to see. It's nice when you can see the hard work pay off. So.
And sometimes we don't put it into numbers, and then we do put it into numbers, we capture
yes.
that, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
And then as you get, an example earlier, it's like, it's like you kind of go
right,
from, this
right.
is not good to.
Yeah.
But you gotta get the numbers down.
Mhm. Mhm.
Just the structure of the funding. I'm embarrassed to admit, I've never really had a good understanding. Well, I'd say it's mediocre understanding.
Yeah.
There's about this many people in the state. That really-
Yeah.
Not only in this-
Yeah.
It's kind of like the hub, when you say it's kind of like the school finance hub.
Region 12 in Waco is one of Premier Hub's first school finance in the state. The gentleman that you had in here and his 2 colleagues that are primary with him full time.
In the entire state.
Hmm.
This is where they look to.
And they serve across the state.
Interesting.
Your last one.
Yeah, I think just seeing how many different people are involved in how many different things to make an enterprise move in one direction. It's kind of overwhelming at times, but it's also really inspiring to see how many levels down even just one initiative can go, much less the idea that we're here for these core principles to support students. So, yeah, I think so the action is to really think about where do I fit, not just as a board member, but as a community member in all those different layers of everybody who's working in this direction. So I don't know. So the one that jumped to my mind, we talked about an initiative of like talent acquisition. So I don't know if y'all post up at the Baylor Job Fair.
Oh, yeah.
I'll just hang out there with my Rapoport shirt, so that way
Yeah.
every graduate, since I know them all. That comes in. Yeah, no, I don't want to do it.
Maybe you could ask.
Vacation.
One year we had a really good.
I promise
vacation,
you,
but-
I can pull students.
Okay.
Was he a
Oh,
kid?
Know them
Wow.
all.
But no.
I just, hey, have you guys
Yeah.
thought about sticking around?
Journey
You
of
ever
it.
wanted, only have 17 kids in your class?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So-
yeah.
And be a part of innovative educational practices
That's right.
in all sorts of amazing
Yeah.
things.
Thank you for inviting us, and you'll get an email with everything in it just to you, and you can send it on.
Perfect.
Sounds
And since
amazing.
y'all are here, you don't have homework.
Love it. Yeah,
Go to that one website, txschools.org, just.
I will.
And then people have a short homework assignment, everybody wants to be
Make sure, yes.
Glow.
And I dropped all three presentations in the board drive for you.
Perfect.
So they're
Okay,
already
good.
in there for that.
Okay,
Um,
good.
We will take time to look at the glow rows. So that's your homework.
Yeah.
Okay, can I have a motion?
I'm making a motion, we adjourn.
So,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Yay.
Hey, Rachel, you go.